Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the George W. Norris Legislative Chamber for the 83rd day of the 108th Legislature First Session. Our chaplain for today is Reverend Jason Gantz from Gordon Berean Church in Gordon, Nebraska, Senator Tom Brewer's district. Please rise.
Well, thank you. It's an honor to be here with you today. I wanted to read out of Ephesians chapter 6, starting with verse 10. It says, "Finally, my brethren, be strong in the Lord and in the power of his might. Put on the whole armor of God that you may be able to stand against the wiles of the devil." Stand against the wiles of the devil. Let's pray. Father, we know that this is a spiritual battle that we see going on in our world, in our country, in our state. Father, we understand that the enemy does have strategies, and he is attacking, and he wants to divide, and he wants to conquer, and Lord, he wants to keep us from anything that is of you. So, Father, I pray today for our senators, Lord, for these men and women who have willingly given up their time, their efforts, time with family, Lord, to serve in this way. Father, I pray that you would give them the strength to stand, because we know that only when we stand in your power, in your might, to stand for what's right, Lord, will you honor and bless us. And so, Father, we pray for these men and women today, Lord, that even as they make decisions, that they would do those, that the decisions they make would be in, Lord, that they would bring honor to you, and it would go stand with your principles. And so we thank you, Lord. We pray that you would work, and we pray this in the name of Jesus Christ, who alone can save. Amen.
I recognize Senator Mosier for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Please join me in the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. I call to order the 83rd day of the 108th Legislature First Session. Senators, please record your presence. Roll call. Mr. Clerk, please record.
There's quorum present, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. Are there any corrections for the journal?
I have no corrections at this time, sir.
Thank you. Are there any messages, reports, or announcements?
There are, Mr. President, single amendment to be printed from Senator Blood, AM 1923 to LB 50. It's all I have at this time.
Senator Bosson would like to recognize Dr. Rachel Blake of Lincoln, who is serving as the family physician of the day, located under the north balcony. Welcome, Dr. Blake. Thank you, Mr. Clerk. We will now proceed to the first item on the agenda.
Mr. President, select file LB 243A, introduced by Senator Breezy. Priority motion, Senator Michaela Cavanaugh would move to bracket the bill until June 9th, 2023.
Senator Cavanaugh, you're welcome to open on your motion.
Thank you, Mr. President. Good morning, colleagues. It was nice to have a little break yesterday. Okay, so this is article yesterday in the Nebraska Examiner. Nebraska Governor Jim Pillen signs abortion gender care restrictions into law. Opponents vow to fight and filibuster into 2024. Let's see here. Gotta make this a little bit bigger. Legislative Bill 574, proposed by State Senator Kathleen Kauth of Omaha, passed 33-15 last Friday on the final round of debate. The measure includes an approximate 10-week abortion ban, 10 weeks gestational age, and restrictions on transition surgeries, hormone therapies, and puberty blockers for youth. Today is an extraordinary, historic day for the state of Nebraska, Pillen said in a signing ceremony. It's a day where it's really simple. Protect our kids so that our state has a bigger and brighter future. Under the law, the chief medical officer in Nebraska Department of Health and Human Services would be charged with setting the rules and regulations around the puberty blockers and hormone patients. May I have a gavel? Colleagues, you don't have to listen to me, but it's extremely loud in here. You also don't have to stay. We're not under a call of the House or final reading, so you can come back in 30 minutes. Thank you. Today is about celebrating. The abortion restrictions will become law after one legislative day, approximately at midnight on Tuesday, according to legislative rules. State Senator Joni Albright of Thurston, who led the original 6-week abortion ban that failed by one vote on second reading, choked up Monday as she thanked her colleagues in Pillen for sticking by her and getting more restrictions into law. The current law allows abortions up to 20 weeks post-fertilization or 22 weeks gestational age. LB 574 included exceptions for rape, incest, and life of the mother. Today is about celebrating and protecting the unborn and allowing our children to grow, Albright said. I look forward to the day when every child is protected from conception to elective abortions. One thing that I find interesting about this bill is that Senator Reapy had numerous times expressed his concerns over the rape exception, that it was going to lead to more reports of rape so that people could get the health care that they needed. And that's why he didn't vote for the 6-week ban, but that's in this ban. And that is exactly what's going to happen, because if you don't file criminal charges for sexual assault when you get your abortion, then your doctor's probably not going to perform it. So yay for re-traumatizing victims. Way to go, your Nebraska Legislature. The gender care restrictions will become effective October 1. Oh, that's right. Yesterday that all became effective. Awesome. So that's fun. Because abortion care is health care. And even if you don't like the word abortion, when you have a miscarriage, your medical chart says an abortion. You don't have to like the term, but that is the medical term. Miscarriage is not a medical term. So let's just keep traumatizing those patients, shall we? The gender care restrictions will become effective October 1, and youths who previously received transition medications before that date can continue. However, opponents said it's unclear whether the law allows patients to receive blockers, for example, to then receive hormones. What I find fascinating about all of this is the rhetoric around how 574 was all about protecting kids, yet you put a grandfather clause in for these therapies and surgeries. So did they need to be protected? Because if they did, why are we not stopping it entirely? Or did we just need to protect future kids and not current trans kids? It's all very confusing because we are allowing for the treatments to continue, mostly because there was an acknowledgement that it would be hugely detrimental to their health care and well-being to discontinue them. But if we didn't do that, then people wouldn't have voted for it. So we had to do that. But those same people were like, you know what, just do something fake for me. If you could just put a fake thing in to protect kids for me, and then I can vote for it. Because then I can say, we're not hurting the kids that are currently doing this, even though you're totally hurting them. And we're protecting those kids that need this care by stopping them from getting this care, because we're acknowledging that this care is acceptable enough to have a grandfather clause. If it's acceptable enough to have a grandfather clause, then maybe you should hit pause mentally and think about it. It might actually be acceptable then to have it as care. Just putting that out into the universe for the 3 people who apparently voted for LB 574 because of me. Not because it was good policy, not because they thought that if we didn't do this, kids were going to get hurt. No, 3 people voted for it because they were being petty. That's what Senator Slama said. It's a great reason. It's a great reason to take away people's rights. Pettiness. I don't like a lot of you. That doesn't mean that's going to impact how I vote for stuff. If I don't like you, I'm probably not going to actively vote for your stuff unless I like it. But unless I dislike it, I'm not going to vote against it either. I'm just not going to vote for it. And under normal circumstances, I wouldn't filibuster your stuff if I didn't like you. And I'm also not filibustering your stuff if I don't like you. I'm filibustering your stuff because I don't like LB 574 and what this body collectively did, but not because I don't like someone. I'm just filibustering to filibuster at this point. And some people are like, well, why? I mean, it's day 83. Why still filibuster? The bill passed. It's day 83. There's 7 days left of session? Well, there's next year. And I am worried about next year and what this body is going to do out of pure pettiness and idiocracy. So the less we pass this year carries over to next year. And then we start next year with the things that carried over from this year, and we have to decide what of those things matter. It's day 83, and we haven't yet passed any tax cuts. And on day 80, we passed the budget. The last day that we possibly could, we passed the budget. Why? Why has it taken us so long to do these things? Because this body collectively decided that taking away health care from Nebraskans was more important than anything we were sent to do, anything that we heard on the campaign trail that we were sent here to do. A bill that didn't even exist in your own minds was more important. A bill that had nothing to do with your constituents' concerns was more important than addressing the reasons you were sent here. So there we are, day 83, and we haven't passed any tax cuts. What a wonderful legislating body we are. I thought that I would come here and work on taxes and policy. But I was so wrong. I just got to be a part of a body that wants to be the biggest nanny state that ever existed. Government overreach, that's us, your Nebraska Legislature. So, what a treat. What a treat. So,
time, Senator.
Thank you.
You're next in the queue.
Thank you. Just getting there. Get back in the queue. Okay. Let's finish this article. Let's go on this journey. I think there's some fun things that are said in here. There are. Okay. LB 574 faced significant opposition this year and spurred a 12-week-long, 13 now, filibuster. But Kauth and Pillen said the purpose is simple, protecting our kids and saving babies. I brought LB 574 because you have too many kids who are being swept up in what is a social contagion. You all are following a person who is calling the LGBTQ community a social contagion, and you want me to say that you're not anti-LGBTQ? That's baloney Skittles if ever I saw baloney Skittles. You are anti-LGBTQ for voting for LB 574. The introducer of LB 574 believes that the community itself is a social contagion. That is vile. And you are locked arms in arms with her. And being told that their bodies are not perfect the way they are. And if they just switch their gender, they'll be fine and everything will be great. Hello, magazines. Young women have been told for as long as what young women have existed that our bodies are not perfect the way they are. That is why plastic surgery exists. And it is not because of trans youth or trans adults for that matter. The social contagion is the social construct that there is something specific that is beautiful. That's the social contagion, not gender identity, not LGBTQ. Kauth said, that's not true. Thank you. It's not. Everyone is perfect the way that they are. That doesn't mean that you can't change who you are to be who you need to be. You're still perfect. And if you want to change something about yourself, you should change that about yourself. You're still perfect. If you need to live a specific way to be happy, you should do that. You're still perfect. We will not stop. The new law is expected to face significant challenges at the ballot box and in the courts, according to opposing senators and advocacy groups outside the legislature. Pillen said he and his team are ready to fight the challenges. State Senator Danielle Conrad of Lincoln, George Duncan of Lincoln, and John Kavanaugh of Omaha, all attorneys have said the bill faces multiple areas of scrutiny under the law. One argument is that LB 574 on the gender care side determines on basis of sex. It does. We've talked about this. Well, I've talked about this for several hours. It is one of 130 bills nationwide that will restrict health care for primarily LGBTQ people. For example, cisgender boys or girls could continue to receive some restricted treatments such as breast augmentation or puberty blockers, while transgender youth could not. Yeah, that's discrimination. You voted for it. And then you complained on the microphone that you were sick of being called anti-gay. You voted for pure and simple discrimination. It's not complicated. You are against the LGBTQ community. Period. And guess what else? Guess what we have coming? We have school vouchers, which gives tax dollars to religious institutions that discriminate against the LGBTQ community. And the introducer of that bill is sick of being called anti-gay. Then don't bring anti-gay bills and don't vote for anti-gay bills if you don't want to be called anti-gay. The ACLU includes LB 574 among nearly 500 state-level proposals that are attacks on the LGBTQ rights. After the fall of Roe versus Wade in 2022, dozens of states moved to restrict abortion, with lawsuits challenging many of those new laws. Multiple states have also implemented restrictions or bans on gender-affirming care since the Supreme Court struck down Roe, which has been challenged too. Mindy Rush Chipman, interim executive director of ACLU of Nebraska, said Pillen's signature betrays a total disregard for Nebraska's freedoms, health, and well-being.
Time, Senator. You're next in the queue, and this is your last opportunity before your close.
Thank you. Every option is on the table to undo these regressive measures, including seeking justice through the courts. Rush Chipman said in a statement, "We will not stop working toward a future that safeguards all Nebraskans' rights, including the rights of transgender youth, their families, and people in their reproductive health care." Backdoor banned in single subject. Opponents have also said the law violates Nebraska's Constitution's single subject rule, requiring that laws deal with single issues. Kauth and other supporters argue their law upholds on the standard because it deals with health care and protects babies and children. Dungan on Friday also criticized the legislature's unlimited and unrestrained delegation to chief medical officer and DHHS. State Senator John Frederickson of Omaha said the delegation could lead to a backdoor ban on transition medications for transgender minors. Yes, it could. Could, would, will, yes. Pillen did not specify what guidance he would give interim chief direct medical officer Dr. Timothy Tesmer, whose confirmation hearing is this week. However, Pillen noted that he has known Tesmer for a long time. Great. So he knows Nebraska, Pillen said of Tesmer. He understands that his job is to carry out the law that has been signed in, and that's what's expected him to do. Tesmer served as the State Board of Health in March. Chair of the State Board of Health in March. Remember that? Good times. When it issued a statement in support of an unamended version of LV 574 that included a full ban on medications for minors. What? This is the person that's going to be in charge of making the rules about all of this. Totally, I don't see a problem. Do you see a problem? I don't see a problem. It'll be fine. What could go wrong? State Senator Lynn Walls of Fremont and Kavanaugh put forward specific rules and regulations. That's, I think, John Kavanaugh. Actually, no, I don't think he did that. Oh yes, he did in his amendment. And John Kavanaugh put forward specific rules and regulations that would have clarified some of the confusion and offered specific guidance for the bill for when the bill goes into effect. They drafted these with Frederickson. Walls said their proposal version could serve as a roadmap for Tesmer. State Senator Ben Hansen of Blair introduced the amendment to revive an abortion ban this year, calling those efforts one of legislative teamwork, compromise, and courage. Might have been teamwork. I'm not going to speak to the courage. It was not compromise. It's not compromise when you compromise with yourself. That's not a compromise. Otherwise, I am like queen of compromise. I am constantly compromising with myself. Does that count? While this approach doesn't seem to be the norm in Washington, D.C., this is what good government looks like, Hansen said. Lawmakers also gave a nod to State Senator Julie Slama of Dunbar, whose absence Friday, I'm going to skip over that. It's one example of extraordinary efforts to get the bill passed. Others included State Senator Ray Aguilar of Grand Island, who is recovering from knee surgery, to the chamber in time to vote on the first round when the legislature taking a 45-minute pause in debate on the second round to salvage the legislation. Hansen said that when it comes to protecting children, lawmakers will do all they could do. They will. They will lie. They will cheat. They will steal. They will break their own rules for good governance. Let's not confuse Nebraska nice with Nebraska meek, he said. Filibuster to continue as 2024 takes shape. Another proposal, LB 575, the Sports and Spaces Act, is expected to be considered next year.
1 minute.
It would restrict sporting teams' bathrooms and locker rooms for K through 12 based on sex assigned at birth. State Senator Dave Merman of Glenville. Oh, this is my last time. Okay, so then I have a close, and I don't know what time we started on this, so I'll probably have to do a motion to reconsider, but that's fine. State Senator Dave Merman of Glenville, chair of the Education Committee, said it's his hope the bill comes to the floor and is passed next year. Of course it is. The bill has 28 co-sponsors. Of course it does. More than LB 574. Why not? And is missing 4 supporters of that measure: Senator John Arch, Senator Carol Boslin, Senator Mike Mosier, and Senator Slama. 5 of the 8 Education Committee members are co-sponsors because they're not against the LGBTQ community, not at all. They'll just get on the microphone and tell you that they aren't, and then they will vote completely against the community, 100% of the time, and co-sponsor bills, 100% of the time. That's my time.
You're now recognized for your close.
Thank you. All right, let's see if we can get through this article. Co-sponsors do not always mean promised support, but it is an indication that LB 575 would be a defining mark in 2024. Yay! Everybody excited for the 60-day session where all we do is continue to talk about what we talked about for the 90-day session? I know I am. Funsies. It's going to be great. Why? Why, Nebraska? Why? Why would we continue this madness? Because your Nebraska legislature decided that it is their priority to, when we have more money than we have ever had in our history, to not do tax cuts, to not do a budget, but to attack trans youth. That's why your Nebraska legislature, God bless. Had they not filibustered, this bill would have been dead in February, Cal said. That is a lie. Calling it a 3 to 5 year issue to work on. If that were the case, then why wouldn't you have worked on it for 3 to 5 years? What is wrong with all of you? One senator is telling reporters that they had no idea what any of this was about, and they still voted for it. They had never heard about it. They didn't know it was an issue. They didn't know it was a widespreading the nation, and they still voted for it. The introducer said, hadn't I not filibustered, they would have worked on it more like a normal person. Well, be a normal person then and work on it more. And everybody who's been here for more than a hot second knows that you don't pass sweeping medical changes like this on a flip of a dime, but you did anyways. And if you did it because I irritated you, you are a failure of a legislator. That's not why you vote for things. People are irritating. So what? Get over that. You vote for things because you believe in them. You vote for things because they're good policy. You vote for things because they're good for the state. You don't vote for things because I get under your skin, or vote against things because I get under your skin. That just makes you look small. That's not a reason to vote for something. That's not a reason to push policy. That's not a reason to hurt trans kids. That's not a reason to take away parental rights. That's not a reason to take away civil rights and human rights because I irritate you. I didn't see my irritation of you bothering you so much when I was helping you get your bills amended the way you wanted them. When I was holding things up so that you could work with others to get what you wanted done. I didn't see your irritation then. I think this is not what Nebraska is, Kavanaugh said of LB 574. I think this is me. I don't know if it's the other Senator Kavanaugh. This is not what Nebraska wants, and we will see that reflected in the coming months and years. That's the end of it. Thanks to the Nebraska Examiner for that article. If people thought that Friday would be the end, that you would vote for this and that it would go away, anyone who thought that is a fool. This is not going away. When you don't stand up to hate, when you are complacent and actually supportive of it, it's not going to go away. We will not go quietly into the night. This did not end on Friday. This began on Friday.
1 minute.
And I have spent 12 weeks, now starting 13, doing this every day. And I will take a rest after the 90th day, and I will come back swinging. This is not the end. And you can file or pass some sort of code of conduct against senators. If you think that's going to stop me, if you think that's going to change me, it's not. And I have way more to say about that on my next time on the mic. So we'll just hold there. I would like a call of the House.
There has been a request to place the House under call. The question is, shall the House go under call? All those in favor vote aye. All those opposed vote nay. Mr. Clerk,
11 ayes, 9 nays, place House under call.
the House is under call. Senators, please record your presence. Those unexcused outside the chamber, please return to the chamber and record your presence. All unauthorized personnel, please leave the floor. The House is under call. Senators Vargas, Frederickson, Armendariz, please return to the chamber. The House is under call. All unexcused members are now present. Senators, the question before the body is the motion to bracket until 6/9/2023. All those in favor vote aye. All those opposed vote nay. Has everyone voted who wishes to vote?
On the bracket.
Motion to bracket fails. Mr. Clerk, you have a motion on the desk.
I do, Mr. President. Senator Breeze moved to invoke cloture on LB 243A pursuant to Rule 7, Section 10.
Senator Breeze, for what purpose do you rise?
call the House machine vote, please.
We are currently under call. Roll call has been requested.
Senator Aguilar. Voting yes. Senator Albright. Voting yes. Senator Arch. Voting yes. Senator Armendariz. Voting yes. Senator Ballard. Voting yes. Senator Blood. Voting yes. Senator Boston. Voting yes. Senator Bostar. Voting yes. Senator Bostelman. Voting yes. Senator Brandt. Voting yes. Senator Brewer. Voting yes. Senator Breezy. Voting yes. Senator John Kavanaugh. Senator Michaela Kavanaugh. Not voting. Senator Clements. Voting yes. Senator Conrad. Voting yes. Senator Day. Senator DeBoer. Voting yes. Senator DeKay. Voting yes. Senator Dorn. Voting yes. Senator Dover. Senator Dungan. Voting yes. Senator Erdman. Voting yes. Senator Frederickson. Voting yes. Senator Holleran. Voting yes. Senator Hansen. Voting yes. Senator Hardin. Voting yes. Senator Holcroft. Voting yes. Senator Hughes. Voting yes. Senator Hunt. Voting no. Senator Ibach. Voting yes. Senator Jacobson. Voting yes. Senator Kauth. Voting yes. Senator Linehan. Voting yes. Senator Lippincott. Voting yes. Senator Lowe. Voting yes. Senator McDonald. Voting yes. Senator McKinney. Senator Mosier. Voting yes. Senator Merman. Voting yes. Senator Raybold. Voting yes. Senator Reapy. Voting yes. Senator Sanders. Voting yes. Senator Slama. Voting yes. Senator Vargas. Voting yes. Senator Von Gillern. Voting yes. Senator Walls. Senator Wayne. Not voting. Senator Wishart. Vote is 40 yeas, 1 nay. Mr. President, on the motion to invoke cloture.
The motion to invoke cloture passes. Next vote is the LB 243A to advance to ENR for engrossing. There's been a request for a roll call.
Senator Aguilar. Voting yes. Senator Albright. Voting yes. Senator Arch. Voting yes. Senator Armendariz. Voting yes. Senator Ballard. Voting yes. Senator Blood. Voting yes. Senator Boston. Voting yes. Senator Bostar. Voting yes. Senator Bostelman. Voting yes. Senator Brandt. Voting yes. Senator Brewer. Voting yes. Senator Breezy. Voting yes. Senator John Kavanaugh. Senator Michaela Kavanaugh. Not voting. Senator Clements. Voting yes. Senator Conrad. Voting yes. Senator Day. Senator DeBoer. Voting yes. Senator DeKay. Voting yes. Senator Dorn. Voting yes. Senator Dover. Senator Dungan. Voting yes. Senator Erdman. Voting yes. Senator Frederickson. Voting yes. Senator Holleran. Voting yes. Senator Hansen. Voting yes. Senator Hardin. Voting yes. Senator Holcroft. Voting yes. Senator Hughes. Voting yes. Senator Hunt. Voting no. Senator Ibach. Voting yes. Senator Jacobson. Voting yes. Senator Kauth. Voting yes. Senator Linehan. Voting yes. Senator Lippincott. Voting yes. Senator Lowe. Voting yes. Senator McDonald. Voting yes. Senator McKinney. Senator Mosier. Voting yes. Senator Merman. Voting yes. Senator Raybold. Voting yes. Senator Reapy. Voting yes. Senator Sanders. Voting yes. Senator Slama. Voting yes. Senator Vargas. Voting yes. Senator Von Gillern. Voting yes. Senator Walls. Senator Wayne. Voting yes. Senator Wishart. Vote is 41 yeas, 1 nay. Mr. President, on advancement.
LB 243A is advanced to ENR. Raise the call. Mr. Clerk, next item.
Mr. President, next item, legislative bill, select file legislative bill 583A. Senator Michaela Kavanaugh moved to bracket the bill until June 9th, 2023.
Senator Kavanaugh, you're welcome to open on your motion.
Thank you, Mr. President. So it started talking about that there maybe will be a new code of conduct for senators, and I'm really looking forward to that. I just assume, maybe it's hubris, maybe it's my ego, I don't know. I assume that these kinds of things are in reaction to me. And I've said it before, anything you do to me, you do to yourselves. And I really am hoping for a code of conduct for senators that has some consequences, because right now there are no consequences for all of the terrible behavior of members of this body in positions of power over other people. So I very much hope that we have this, because frankly, I would like when people come and report things about inappropriate interactions with sitting senators, that there are consequences for that and that they have an avenue to pursue for that. Because right now, why would you report any of it? So I look forward to it. There's a lot of people in here that I think there'll be a line to report before you even get to me. But I stand by my actions, and all of my actions are in public. It's the actions that aren't in public. It's the actions that aren't in the light of day. It's the actions that are clearly inappropriate that I look forward to people having the opportunity to report and have consequences. Because I am tired of there being no consequences for some individuals' very bad behavior. So again, what you do to me, you do to yourselves. And I am living fully in the light of day. All right, what else? Since not everyone keeps up on the news, I thought I would update us on the news today. Voter ID article. Well, this, first of all, I hope that my colleague is feeling okay today. Doing an 8-hour filibuster is exhausting. So I hope that much needed rest was gotten and recuperation. This is after a floor fight, legislative committee's voter ID bill wins support over Slamas. I would like to couch my vote on this one. I voted for the voter ID bill. I am way less than thrilled about all of it. I think that voter ID is an obstacle to democracy and an attempt to hamper the voice of the minority and to disenfranchise voters. But it is the will of the people. They voted on it at the ballot. Therefore, we must enact the policies around it. So I voted for it. I didn't like it. I wasn't happy about it. But I voted for it because it was the policy that was called for by the people of Nebraska, not because I liked or disliked anyone. See how that works? Fascinating, isn't it? Lincoln. The months-long fight over the best flavor of voter ID for Nebraska spilled over onto the floor of the legislature Monday as State Senator Julie Slama staging a one-woman filibuster against the proposal forwarded by the Government and Military Affairs Committee. But Slama failed to persuade the body to back her competing plan. After listening for 8 hours, senators advanced the committee bill 43-1. Slama highlights flaws. Slama spent much of the day poking at the committee's amendment, AM 1801. She questioned the constitutionality and legality of the amendment's plan to carry out the new voter-approved constitutional requirement that Nebraska voters show a photo ID. She repeatedly blamed the bill's faults on Secretary of State Bob Evnen and the committee chairman, not the committee chairman, State Senator Tom Brewer, who had sought Evnen's help in drafting the amendment. Slama told the legislature conservatives to question the bill because some Democrats backed it. I was not one. I did not back it. I voted for it because, again, will of the people. And honestly, if Senator Slama's amendment had got attached, I probably would have voted for it still because will of the people, etc. But I didn't back any of it because I don't back voter ID. So I guess now that the bill has moved forward, it doesn't matter. But if people were voting against it because they thought that it was like something that I was excited about, I was not excited about it. The people who oppose voter ID are now in control of voter ID. She said, this process and procedure has failed Nebraskans. I mean, I take that point. I wasn't in control of this. I very much oppose voter ID, but perhaps others who oppose voter ID were in control. I believe Secretary Bob Evnen supports voter ID. So if he was the one working on the amendment, then that's, I don't know. Not a conspiracy, but a consensus. State Senator Danielle Conrad of Lincoln, who serves on the government committee, disagreed, saying, what you have here, my friends, is not a conspiracy, but a consensus. Brewer said he felt that the final vote tally validated the process his committee carried out. From hearing from any members of the public who wanted to testify at public hearings to working with stakeholders to find the best balance they could to do what the voters wanted without leaving people out. Some of this was respect for the government committee, Brewer said of the vote. Some of this was respect for me. This was a one-person filibuster, and if you don't get the legislation that you want, I'm not sure this is the best way to get it. Competing approaches to voter ID. Slama, who was the public face of last fall's voter ID ballot initiative, said her biggest concern remains that the committee amendment would let Nebraskans write down their own ID numbers from state-approved photo IDs when they request early voting ballots. State and local election officials would check those ID numbers against an electronic database, which would show a corresponding photo ID. Slama argued Monday that letting someone write down their own ID number is not the same as requiring a voter to show a photo ID. Her competing amendment, AM 1883, would require a signature from registered Nebraska voter, a notary public, or a military notary confirming that they had seen an early voter's photo ID. She also wanted early voters' IDs checked when they return a ballot by mail, not when they request one. Voting rights advocates, including Civic Nebraska and ACLU Nebraska, have criticized this approach as leaving voters too little time to fix mistakes on early ballots. They have said using mainly Nebraska voters as witness could limit voters traveling or serving in the military. Slama argued that she modeled her approach after voter ID programs in other conservative states, including Missouri and South Dakota, and said the government committee's proposal isn't conservative enough. She said voters approved a conservative version
1 minute.
for voter ID, avoiding a special session. Days after saying she would do whatever it took to stop the committee's bill, including forcing a special session, Slama took a subtler approach Monday, saying she wanted to help lawmakers avoid a special session later to address constitutional questions she raised about the bill. Her argument mirrored many of the points voting rights advocates made against her proposal, namely that it couldn't withstand judicial scrutiny over several hours. She suggested 3 fixes to committee amendments. I could have told you that that wasn't going to work because I spent like 12 weeks talking about constitutional issues with LB 574. People did not care at all. So, I mean, I think it's a solid argument, the constitutionality of things, or just the legality of things, but this body does not care about that. We are happy to spend money taking it to the courts. First, she wanted to add...
Time, Senator.
Thank you.
Senator Erdman, you are recognized.
Question.
The question has been called. Do I see 5 hands? I do. The question is, shall debate cease? All those in favor vote aye. All those opposed vote nay. There's been a request for a roll call. Mr. Clerk.
Senator Aguilar, voting yes. Senator Albright, voting yes. Senator Arch, voting yes. Senator Armendariz, Senator Ballard, voting yes. Senator Blood, voting yes. Senator Boston, voting yes. Senator Bostar, not voting. Senator Bostelman, voting yes. Senator Brandt, voting yes. Senator Brewer, voting yes. Senator Breezy, voting yes. Senator John Kavanaugh, Not voting, Senator Michaela Kavanaugh. Not voting, Senator Clements. Voting yes, Senator Conrad. Voting no, Senator Day. Senator DeBoer. Voting yes, Senator DeKay. Voting yes, Senator Dorn. Voting yes, Senator Dover. Senator Dungan. Not voting, Senator Erdman. Voting yes, Senator Frederickson. Not voting, Senator Holleran. Voting yes, Senator Hansen. Voting yes, Senator Hardin. Voting yes, Senator Holcroft. Voting yes, Senator Hughes. Voting yes, Senator Hunt. Senator Ibach. Voting yes, Senator Jacobson. Voting yes, Senator Kauth. Voting yes, Senator Linehan. Voting yes, Senator Lippincott. Voting yes, Senator Lowe. Voting yes, Senator McDonald. Voting yes, Senator McKinney. Senator Mosier. Voting yes, Senator Merman. Voting yes, Senator Raybold. Voting yes, Senator Reapy. Senator Sanders. Voting yes, Senator Slama. Voting yes, Senator Vargas. Not voting, Senator Von Gillern. Voting yes, Senator Walls. Senator Wayne. Not voting, Senator Wishart. Not voting. Vote is 33 ayes, 1 nay to cease debate, Mr. President.
Debate does cease. Senator Michaela Kavanaugh, you're recognized to close on your bracket motion.
Oh, it doesn't matter. Thank you, Mr. President. That was fun. I hope that keeps happening, because all I have is floor motions and floor amendments and then reconsideration. So great. Yeah, I'll finish the article and then we'll go to a vote on this, and then I have a motion to reconsider the vote on this. So we'll take the full 30 minutes on this, but that's fine. We can do that however you want. If you want to talk. If you want to call the question. We can do it however you all want. We'll take the full time regardless. Okay, so this is about the voter ID debate yesterday. A focused bill. Brewer and members of his committee, including Conrad and State Senator Jane Raybold of Lincoln, pushed back by citing letters of support for the committee amendment from 92 of the state's 93 county election commissioners, except for the exception was Sarpy County, where Slama's sister Emily Ethington serves as election commissioner. Conrad, who opposed voter ID ballot initiative, said she was pleased that Brewer and the committee had worked to minimize the potential harm from implementing voter ID on voters, including rural voters, voters in nursing homes, and military members stationed across Nebraska. The measure before you in the committee amendment is the most thoughtful approach, Conrad said. This will give election officials enough time to prepare changes for the 2024 election. New tone during debate. The subdued tone of Monday's debate contrasted with Friday's contentious demonstrations against a stricter abortion ban and state curbs on gender-affirming care for minors. State Senator Michaela Kavanaugh, who led the filibuster against the legislation, joked with Slama on Monday. Kavanaugh was one of several Democrats who yielded time to Slama to let her make her case. Others included State Senator Carol Blood of Bellevue and Conrad. They also worked to give her brief moments of respite and rest because of her health. For Slama, Monday's filibuster marked a test of endurance just days after she... Okay, I'm going to skip that part. She handed fellow senators a binder of information with specific criticisms of the committee bill. Brewer answered with a handout of his own. Some of Slama's sharpest criticisms involved cost estimates for the Secretary of State's office that estimated her bill would cost $20 million to implement. Officials told the committee its amendment would cost about $2 million to carry out. The committee attached its amendment to the Legislative Bill 514 instead of Slama's LB 535 because Slama had threatened to kill her bill if they tried. Brewer said he expects the second round of debate on Wednesday and final reading early next week. In the end, committee members said their approach was pragmatic. Other committee members, State Senator John Lowe of Kearney, said his goal for the bill and for Nebraska was well-run elections was simple: do as little harm as possible. For the record, the joking around, you left out the most important part, was my admiration of the binder. It was legit next level. So I just want that stated for the record that Senator Slama had like a next level binder, and I had serious binder envy. Because as I have stated before, if I've talked about one thing more than the Oxford comma, it's probably my love of binders. All right, well, that's the voter ID debate from yesterday. And, it was interesting. Again, I'm
1
not
minute.
a fan of voter ID. Didn't really want to vote for any of it. I did appreciate the debate, and I was listening for most of it. And I did learn a lot about what was in the bill in the extended debate. So I thought that was very helpful. Because I hadn't had really the time to dig into the bill itself or the amendments. So hearing the extended debate was helpful for me. I had already, in full transparency, I had already decided that I was going to support the committee amendment, but I did listen with sort of open ears, thinking that perhaps I could be persuaded, but I was mostly already a yes. But I did think that there were some interesting points made in opposition. So there we go. Just a roll call vote. Thanks.
Senators, the question before the body is the bracket motion. There has been a request for a roll call vote.
Senator Aguilar. Voting no. Senator Albright. Senator Arch. Voting no. Senator Armendariz. Senator Ballard. Voting no. Senator Blood. Voting no. Senator Boston. Voting no. Senator Bostar. Voting no. Senator Bostelman. Voting no. Senator Brandt. Voting no. Senator Brewer. Voting no. Senator Breezy. Senator John Kavanaugh. Voting no. Senator Michaela Kavanaugh. Not voting. Senator Clements. Voting no. Senator Conrad. Voting no. Senator Day. Senator DeBoer. Voting no. Senator DeKay. Voting no. Senator Dorn. Voting no. Senator Dover. Senator Dungan. Voting no. Senator Erdman. Voting no. Senator Frederickson. Voting no. Senator Holleran. Voting no. Senator Hansen. Voting no. Senator Hardin. Voting no. Senator Holcroft. Voting no. Senator Hughes. Voting no. Senator Hunt. Senator Ibaugh. Senator Jacobson. Voting no. Senator Kauth. Voting no. Senator Linehan. Senator Lippincott. Voting no. Senator Lowe. Voting no. Senator McDonald. Voting no. Senator McKinney. Senator Mosier. Voting no. Senator Merman. Voting no. Senator Raybold. Voting no. Senator Reapy. Senator Sanders. Voting no. Senator Slama. Voting no. Senator Vargas. Voting no. Senator Von Gillern. Voting no. Senator Walls. Senator Wayne. Senator Wishart. Voting no. Vote is 0 ayes, 33 nays, Mr. President, on the motion to bracket.
The bracket motion fails. Mr. Clerk, next item.
Mr. President, Senator Kavanaugh moved to reconsider the vote just taken on the bracket motion.
Senator Kavanaugh, you're welcome to open on your reconsideration motion.
Thank you, Mr. President. Okay. So the next debate on the floor yesterday, criminal justice reform. Major criminal justice reform bill limps past. Limps? It's a bit harsh. Initial debate amid disagreements. It didn't go 8 hours. It went like 2. It went like 2 hours, 2.5-ish. I would say that's a resounding success, despite all of the work happening outside the chamber against it. Supporters, critics agree to keep working on measure all can support. I will say it was starting to remind me of the LB 920 debate last night, though that went much later. It was like almost 11 o'clock at night before I think we adjourned even to just like take a pause and come back the next day. But it was grueling. So I don't know. Last night seemed very mild comparatively. Okay. There's a picture here. A huddle of state senators cluster around state senator. A huddle of state senators cluster around State Senator Justin Wayne in blue sweater to discuss ways to move forward a criminal justice bill. Ultimate passage remained uncertain Monday night. And it looks like it's Senator Wayne, Senator Conrad, Senator Bozen, Senator Decay, and I think Senator Brandt, maybe, not sure. It's a little pixelated. A major criminal justice proposal went forward Monday night at the Nebraska Legislature, and lingering disagreements over sentencing policies. Legislative Bill 50, which was the subject of sidebar negotiations throughout the day and into the evening, was advanced from first round debate on a 28-8 vote. But the vote came only after an agreement to work on differences before the measure came up for debate again, which is likely later this week as the 2023 session winds down. The measure was billed as a way to provide incentives for inmates to engage in rehabilitation programming and perhaps get released on parole earlier, with a larger goal of reducing the need for construction of a second new prison. Wouldn't that be nice? This bill is probably one of the most fiscally responsible things we could do this year, said State Senator Justin Wayne of Omaha, who chairs the legislature's Judiciary Committee and led the crafting of the multiple proposals in the bill. Senator Wayne, we don't like to do things that are fiscally responsible this year. That's not our jam, but I appreciate the comments regardless. He estimated that Nebraska could be spending as much as $263 million a year to house inmates at the current projected growth in prison population and be forced to build 2 new prisons unless something is done. But critics said that LB 50 went too far in allowing a possible earlier release from prison on parole. They said it must be amended before it wins support from them, the governor, attorney general, and county prosecutors. Here is just a pro tip for y'all. The governor, the attorney general, and the county prosecutors did not elect you. You should vote for things that you think are good policy, not things you are told to vote for by other elected officials. Just saying. They have their constituency. You have your constituency. They have their job. You have your job. If you don't want to do your job, then you should do a different job. But if they wanted to do your job, they would have run for your job, and they didn't. So don't let them do it for you. Just a thought, because I heard a lot that people are voting for things only because the governor told them to, or voting against things only because the governor told them to. And that is a terrible way to be a state senator. You were sent here to use your judgment, not somebody else's judgment. Even if you align in a lot of things with the governor, you should still use your judgment, not his judgment. And maybe that will result in the same vote. But you should still use some critical thinking skills of your own and not just push a button because somebody told you to. Push a button because somebody made good arguments and persuaded you that it was the right way to vote, but not because somebody just flat out told you to. Okay. He estimated that Nebraska could be spending as much as okay, I already read that part. Lincoln Senator Carolyn Bosden, a former county prosecutor, said she could not support the bill unless changes were made in two clauses. One that allows earlier parole eligibility for some inmates, and another that would reduce criminal penalties for some repeat or habitual criminals. A hard conversation. Under LB 50, someone sentenced to serve 20 years in prison would be eligible for parole release after 6 years, she said. Right now, they're eligible at 10. As a prosecutor, I'm not willing to look a victim in the face and tell them that the sentence may be 20 years, but they're eligible for parole in 6. It's a hard conversation. You know what else is a hard conversation? Looking parents in the face and saying, I'm not willing to let you have parental rights in medical decision making, so I'm going to take that away. Yet here we are. So you're apparently capable of hard conversations. Also willing to say, and look somebody in the face and say, I recognize that you are a victim of sexual assault, but I don't care about traumatizing you. So, good to know what the line is. What hard conversations you're willing to have and which hard conversations you don't care about. Who cares what they think? Who cares what they think, McKinney said on Monday. They aren't state senators. They don't run the body. Stop listening to their fear-mongering. I had not read this article in advance, so I hadn't read that line before I made my earlier comments, but I should have read that line first. Thank you, Senator McKinney. Spot on. But three first-year members on the Judiciary Committee, Senators Teresa Ibach, Barry DeKay, and Rick Holcroft, said they have questions about LB 50 after talking with local prosecutors, as well as representatives of Governor Jim Pillen and Attorney General Mike Hildress. I believe if you've done the crime, you do the time, said Holcroft, who admitted he was new to criminal punishment issues. But supporters of LB 50 said being tough on crime and protecting public safety means that inmates must engage in rehabilitation before they end their sentences. Too many are jamming out. Wayne said that right now, about 800 inmates a year jam out, meaning they complete their sentences without any programming, and most of those are the most serious felons, with 90 to 95% of all prison inmates eventually getting out. He said it only made sense to encourage efforts to make inmates successful when they return to society. The jam out conversation yesterday, that brought back a lot of memories about LB 920, and I learned a lot, and I wasn't on the committee, so I assume you probably learn even more when you're on the committee. But I learned a lot about what jamming out is, what it means, and why it is so important for us to have sentencing reform so that we reduce jamming out, because jamming out is dangerous. It is dangerous. And we are doing it because we have to. And when we do that, people go back into society without the tools to be successful and without the communities having the resources to be successful and safe. So it is a big problem. 90% of these people are going to be your neighbors, said Omaha Senator Wendy DeBoer. They can either come back as criminals or better sentenced.
Mr. Clerk, for a motion.
Mr. President, Senator Sanders would move to invoke cloture on LB 583A pursuant to Rule 7, Section 10.
Senator Sanders, for what purpose do you rise?
Call of the House, roll call vote.
There has been a request to place the House under call. The question is, shall the House go under call? All those in favor vote aye. All those opposed vote nay. Ms. Clerk?
20 ayes, 4 nays, place House under call.
The House is under call. Senators, please record your presence. Those unexcused senators outside the chamber, please return to the chamber and record your presence. All unauthorized personnel, please leave the floor. The House is under call. All unexcused members are now present. Mr. Clerk, please call the roll.
Senator Aguilar. Voting yes. Senator Albright. Voting yes. Senator Arch. Voting yes. Senator Armendariz. Voting yes. Senator Ballard. Voting yes. Senator Blood. Voting yes. Senator Boston. Voting yes. Senator Bostar. Voting yes. Senator Bostelman. Voting yes. Senator Brandt. Voting yes. Senator Brewer. Voting yes. Senator Breezy. Voting yes. Senator John Kavanaugh. Voting yes. Senator Michaela Kavanaugh. Not voting. Senator Clements. Voting yes. Senator Conrad. Voting yes. Senator Day. Senator DeBoer. Voting yes. Senator DeKay. Voting yes. Senator Dorn. Voting yes. Senator Dover. Senator Dungan. Voting yes. Senator Erdman. Voting yes. Senator Frederickson. Voting yes. Senator Holleran. Voting yes. Senator Hansen. Voting yes. Senator Hardin. Voting yes. Senator Holcroft. Voting yes. Senator Hughes. Voting yes. Senator Hunt. Voting no. Senator Ibaugh. Senator Jacobson. Voting yes. Senator Kauth. Voting yes. Senator Linehan. Voting yes. Senator Lippincott. Voting yes. Senator Lowe. Voting yes. Senator McDonald. Voting yes. Senator McKinney. Senator Mosier. Voting yes. Senator Merman. Voting yes. Senator Raybold. Voting yes. Senator Reapy. Voting yes. Senator Sanders. Voting yes. Senator Slama. Voting yes. Senator Vargas. Voting yes. Senator Von Gillern. Voting yes. Senator Walls. Senator Wayne. Voting yes. Senator Wishart. Voting yes. Vote is 42 ayes, 1 nay, Mr. President, on the motion to invoke cloture.
The motion to invoke cloture is successful. Senators, the next vote is the reconsideration motion. There's been a request for a roll call. Mr. Clerk.
Senator Aguilar. Voting no. Senator Albright. Voting no. Senator Arch. Voting no. Senator Armendariz. Voting no. Senator Ballard. Voting no. Senator Blood. Voting no. Senator Boston. Voting no. Senator Bostar. Voting no. Senator Bostelman. Voting no. Senator Brandt. Voting no. Senator Brewer. Voting no. Senator Breezy. Voting no. Senator John Kavanaugh. Voting no. Senator Michaela Kavanaugh. Not voting. Senator Clements. Voting no. Senator Conrad. Voting no. Senator Day. Senator DeBoer. Voting no. Senator DeKay. Voting no. Senator Dorn. Voting no. Senator Dover. Senator Dungan. Voting no. Senator Erdman. Voting no. Senator Frederickson. Voting no. Senator Holleran. Voting no. Senator Hansen. Voting no. Senator Hardin. Voting no. Senator Holcroft. Voting no. Senator Hughes. Voting no. Senator Hunt. Not voting. Senator Ibaugh. Senator Jacobson. Voting no. Senator Kauth. Voting no. Senator Linehan. Voting no. Senator Lippincott. Voting no. Senator Lowe. Voting no. Senator McDonald. Voting no. Senator McKinney. Senator Mosier. Voting no. Senator Merman. Voting no. Senator Raybold. Voting no. Senator Reapy. Voting no. Senator Sanders. Voting no. Senator Slama. Voting no. Senator Vargas. Voting no. Senator Von Gillern. Voting no. Senator Walls. Senator Wayne. Not voting. Senator Wishart. Voting no. Vote is 0 ayes, 41 nays, Mr. President, on the motion to reconsider.
The motion to reconsider fails. Colleagues, the next motion, or the next item to vote is LB 583A to advance to ENR for engrossing. All those in favor say aye. There has been a request for roll call. Mr. Clerk.
Senator Aguilar. Voting yes. Senator Albright. Voting yes. Senator Arch. Voting yes. Senator Armendariz. Voting yes. Senator Ballard. Voting yes. Senator Blood. Voting yes. Senator Boston. Voting yes. Senator Bostar. Voting yes. Senator Bostelman. Voting yes. Senator Brandt. Voting yes. Senator Brewer. Voting yes. Senator Breezy. Voting yes. Senator John Kavanaugh. Voting yes. Senator Michaela Kavanaugh. Not voting. Senator Clements. Voting yes. Senator Conrad. Voting yes. Senator Day. Senator DeBoer. Voting yes. Senator DeKay. Voting yes. Senator Dorn. Voting yes. Senator Dover. Senator Dungan. Voting yes. Senator Erdman. Voting yes. Senator Frederickson. Voting yes. Senator Holleran. Voting yes. Senator Hansen. Voting yes. Senator Hardin. Voting yes. Senator Holcroft. Voting yes. Senator Hughes. Voting yes. Senator Hunt. Not voting. Senator Ibaugh. Senator Jacobson. Voting yes. Senator Kauth. Voting yes. Senator Linehan. Voting yes. Senator Lippincott. Voting yes. Senator Lowe. Voting yes. Senator McDonald. Voting yes. Senator McKinney. Senator Mosier. Voting yes. Senator Merman. Voting yes. Senator Raybold. Voting yes, Senator Reapy. Voting yes, Senator Sanders. Voting yes, Senator Slama. Voting yes, Senator Vargas. Voting yes, Senator Von Gillern. Voting yes, Senator Walls. Senator Wayne. Voting yes, Senator Wishart. Voting yes. Vote is 42A, 0 nays, Mr. President, on advancement of the bill.
LB 583A is advanced to E&R for engrossing. I raise the call. Mr. Clerk, next item.
Mr. President, new LR 254 from Senator Blood that'll be laid over. Mr. President, select file Legislative Bill 754A. Senator Michaela Cavanaugh would move to bracket the bill until June 9th, 2023.
Senator Kavanaugh, you are welcome to open on your bracket motion.
Thank you, Mr. President. Try to write down the time that we start so that I can keep track. Okay. Now, I would highly recommend you take the next 30 minutes to stretch your legs because the next bill is final reading. So if you got to run to your office for something, now would be a good time to do that because, you know, final reading, you can't leave. So if anybody out in the lobby needs to talk to you or you need to talk to them, I would do that now. Okay, did I finish the criminal justice reform article? I think I did. I think I did. Great. Now on to some national news. Biden and McCarthy strike positive tone after debt limit talks, but no deal yet. So I picked this one for a couple of reasons. One, if the federal government doesn't come to some conclusion or resolution over the debt ceiling, that is very much going to impact our financial situation. So I think that's important. But also, I thought it was just an interesting headline that Biden and McCarthy have, what was the exact strike? Positive tone. Positive tone. So President Joe Biden and Speaker Kevin McCarthy left their closely watched meeting Monday without an agreement on government spending or the debt limit, prolonging a stalemate that could soon disrupt Americans' everyday lives as well as the global economy. Both struck a positive tone Monday, though neither divulged details about what remains unresolved nor how soon they hope to reach an agreement. McCarthy said negotiators will be working through the night. The two leaders have little time to broker a bipartisan deal on the debt ceiling that can pass both chambers of Congress before June 1, the first day the country could enter default under projections from the Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen. Okay, I'm just going to pause for a second. So the negotiators will be working through the night. I don't know about you all, but I imagine like a huge conference table in the Capitol or in the White House. And the White House it's the EOB Executive Office Building, which is attached to the White House. So that would actually, it's not actually in the White House. It's the building across the lawn from the White House that has a super scary set of stairs to go down. I think there's probably an elevator and another exit, but if you're on a certain floor, you exit through and it's like vertical stairs basically that you have to walk down and then across the sidewalk, driveway, and then enter into the White House. Anyways, I don't think I'm giving away national secrets. You can see it from the street. I hope I'm not giving away national secrets. You can see it from the street. Or you can send a toddler through the gate, as happened like a couple weeks ago. Just kidding. Don't do that. But I'm imagining a bunch of people with their shirt sleeves rolled up and cold pizza on the table. And the table's also probably riddled with cans of Diet Coke or regular Coke, because as Senator Hunt once said, we're all on our own aspartame journey. And then, some like really fiery speeches like in an Aaron Sorkin show. I don't know if I think I've talked about this Aaron Sorkin show. And actually, I should save that conversation for the Transportation Committee bill about the Aaron Sorkin show, Sports Night. Okay, so Sports Night, I'm not going to save it. Why would I save it? You start talking about Sports Night, you got to talk about Sports Night, like, obviously. Sports Night was Aaron Sorkin's first TV show before West Wing. And it was a drama about a, like, basically ESPN type sports network show. And I think I think it was like a sports network channel, or was it just a show on a cable network? Now that part I don't remember. Anyways, it was really hard-hitting drama for a sports show, but actually sports do have a lot of drama in them. And one of the episodes that really stands out in my mind is when the female associate producer went to interview a player after some big thing that happened, and he assaulted her, and how the network handled that. And it was not handled well at all. And she was not treated well at all in any of it. And it was really fascinating to see how that was portrayed. But what does that have to do with transportation telecommunications? Haha. Okay. So at the very end of the very last season, the company gets bought by some company because of fiber. And this was like in the 90s, maybe it was in the early 2000s, but like I didn't even know fiber was a thing. And it was because they like were going to own the fiber that was owned by the company, and they were going to make a lot of money off of it. More than they probably even realized, because fiber is like gold right now, which is why we have so many conversations about dark fiber here in the state. And then there's our telecommunications, access to fiber, right-of-ways, and public power. So many things to dig in on there. Anyways, all roads lead back to Sports Night, Aaron Sorkin's first show. A lot of people on Sports Night then go on to be on other Aaron Sorkin shows, including The West Wing. Also, Studio 60 on the Sunset Strip. Was that what it was called? That was a comedy show. It was like a Saturday Night Live show. But I don't think it lasted very long. And it might not have lasted because there was a writer's strike, which we have right now. And I haven't looked up on the latest status of the writer's strike. So how much time do I have left, Madam President?
2 minutes, 20 seconds.
Okay. So I will look up on the status of the writer's strike. But if the writer's strike doesn't get resolved, then entertainment, as we currently know it, is going to have a dry spell. And that makes me sad, because in 7 days, I am going to have slightly more time, not a lot because I have kids, but slightly more time to enjoy watching entertainment like television shows. So if there aren't any new ones, if there isn't any new content, I suppose for me personally, that's okay, because I've got like 4 months worth of content to catch up on. But I am a consumer of entertainment. I love entertainment. I also really love like Hallmark Christmas movies. And the cheesier, the better. Like if you can watch the promo of a Hallmark Christmas movie and know exactly what's going to happen, I'm all in. If it's a mystery what's going to happen, I'm like, you've spent way too much time on the script here. I'm looking for cheesy. I'm looking for corny. I'm looking for predictable. I'm looking for a Christmas movie that I can come in and out of and not be lost as to what is happening. Like, I want to watch the opening scene and be like, that person falls for that person. There's some unrequited love there. I even like when it's so predictable that you know the sub characters and what relationships they're going to fall into. Like, I love the corny predictability of it all. I don't know why. I also like really terrible TV movies, and one of my favorite is about a woman who goes undercover for an underground plastic surgery ring for professional exotic dancers. It was a weird one. I don't remember what it was called. It was like 15 years ago. Anyways, I was reading about the debt ceiling.
Time, Senator, but you're next in the queue.
All right, I'm getting back to the debt ceiling now that I've talked about breast augmentation for exotic dancers. Okay. Where was I? Okay. It felt we had a productive discussion. We don't have an agreement yet, but I did feel the discussion was productive in areas that we have differences of opinion, McCarthy said outside the White House after the meeting. McCarthy said the tone during their conversation was better than any other time we've had discussions. I felt it was productive because look, we both know we've walked through this for a long time where our difference is. We're explaining them, we're giving a give and take of what we think would be best for moving the country forward, McCarthy said. We will have some philosophical differences, but I felt it was productive in that manner. Biden said in a written statement released after the meeting that the only way to move forward is in good faith towards a bipartisan agreement. I like moving forward in good faith. Good faith. It's a good way to move forward. Entering into negotiations and then saying publicly that they're listening exercise, not good faith. Sounds like they're working in good faith in Congress, so they're doing better than us. Wow. That's disappointing. While there are areas of disagreement, the Speaker and I and his lead negotiations, Chairman McHenry and Congressman Graves, and our staffs will continue to discuss the path forward, he added, referring to House Financial Services Chairman Patrick McHenry of North Carolina and Louisiana Rep. Garrett Graves. Biden said Monday before the meeting began that he was optimistic the two could make progress toward bipartisan legislation since they both agreed default wasn't on the table. Biden reiterated he hopes the deal includes changes to the tax code, stressing a pledge he's made throughout his presidency not to increase taxes on anyone making less than $400,000 annually. Wow. We need to cut spending, but here's the disagreement. I think we should be looking at tax loopholes and making sure the wealthy pay their fair share, Biden said. We still have some disagreements, but I think we may be able to get where we have to go, Biden added. We both know we have a significant responsibility, McCarthy said after the meeting, that Republicans weren't considering changes to revenue. The problem is not revenue, the problem is spending. So if you want to know where our differences have been, it's always been the same place, McCarthy said. Biden said Sunday during a press conference in Japan following the G7 summit that he offered $1 trillion in spending cuts to Republicans, though the two sides were still at odds over whether to make any changes to the tax code. Previous meetings, the one-on-one meeting between Biden and McCarthy on Monday follows efforts in early and mid-May by the four congressional leaders to broker a bipartisan deal during meetings in the Oval Office. After the last round of talks, Biden and McCarthy became the top negotiators and appointed key confidants to work on a deal. Graves and McHenry have been meeting almost daily on Capitol Hill with White House Budget Director Shalanda Young and Steve Ricchetti, counselor to the president. McHenry, Young, and Brichetti were all in the Monday meeting, that lasted for nearly 90 minutes, as were other White House aides. We've had tough meetings. We've had difficult meetings. The meeting was productive, McHenry said afterwards outside the White House. It told us, the negotiation team, a little more of the details we need to get to a package that can pass Congress. McHenry said it was helpful to listen to Biden and McCarthy, have a meaningful discussion, and speak directly about their views on the issues they're already trying to sort through. McHenry later repeated a frequently used saying on Capitol Hill: "Nothing is resolved until everything is resolved." No one is going to agree to anything until we have a finalized deal, McHenry said. Yeah, I agree. Nothing is resolved until everything is resolved.
Time, Senator.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Kavanaugh. Senator Raybold, you're recognized.
Thank you, Madam President. I just wanted to check back in. I stand in opposition to LB 754 for a lot of the reasons I've given to my colleagues in the past. I don't think these corporate and individual income tax cuts are sustainable, and they truly benefit the wealthiest individuals in our state of Nebraska. I am very supportive and voted for LB 243 because property tax relief will impact the working families in our state of Nebraska. And I just want to read just a couple of things. This is Paul Hamill with the Nebraska Examiner said, "Together, the two tax cuts, along with Pillen's increased state aid to schools, would amount to about $6.4 billion, according to the governor's office, in tax relief over the next 6 years. It has been billed as moving Nebraska from the middle of the pack in taxation nationally to among the lowest 15 states." Woohoo! We're winning. We're going to win. How do we know we're winning? How do we know Nebraska is winning? What are the metrics that we're going to be looking at and tracking? Are these really transformative property tax cuts combined with these corporate and individual income taxes? Are we going to see an increase in investments in our state of Nebraska? Are we tracking that? Are we going to see an increase in job creation when currently we have about 45,000 job openings? Are we going to see an increase in economic growth? Are we going to see an increase in corporation filings, new corporations forming in our state? And exactly how many young people are we going to retain? But more importantly, how many young people are we going to attract and have them want to move to our state of Nebraska? These are metrics. I've asked my colleagues, can you tell me exactly how many companies you have baked into the forecast that will be new companies forming and wanting to come to our state of Nebraska? I want to credit Senator Von Gillern. He made a good faith effort at trying to show me projections of moving companies and their statistics, which is not a real indicator of corporations moving to a company. That's an indication of people moving from state to state. But we need to see the actual new corporations forming, bringing and sustaining the tax revenue that we're going to be losing in these incredible, unsustainable corporate and individual income taxes. So here's just to review a few things that we've talked about before. Tax receipts are behind the forecast, resulting from lower than expected personal income and sales tax collection, as well as higher than anticipated refunds. The average of all forecasts presented to the board by the two departments were down about $125 million. The forecasting board met and said, instead of that amount, we're now down $80 million, but they have projected an increase on some other elements that should offset some of that. As a result of the April forecasts, which informs the amount of money available for the Appropriations Committee to construct its budget proposal, the committee left originally $750 million for the floor for us to deal with, but now it's $885 million. And that's, of course, after we already rated the cash reserve to help sustain these corporate and individual income tax cuts. So while this is a tremendously large sum of money, it's really not enough to pay for the income tax proposed in
1 minute.
Thank you, Madam President. LB 754, nor the property tax cuts proposed in LB 243. Again, we have established that these income tax benefits, ITEP, which is the Institute of Taxation and Economic Policy, estimates that the average tax savings for the bottom 80% from the child care tax credit specifically is less than $50 annually. However, the tax cut for the top 1% would be on average nearly $26,000 annually when compared to the entire packet. This is scary stuff, and I feel like we're not doing our job as legislatures by being fiscally conservative. I agree that
Time, Senator.
Thank you, Madam President.
Senator Raybold, you're next in the queue.
Thank you. I wanted to just go on and talk about some of the other items. We know this is not sustainable. The budget brought forward by the Appropriation Committee suggests spending $1.2 billion from the state's cash reserve, and that's in fiscal year 23 and 24. That's more money going out in a single year than what is projected to remain in the cash reserve funding after the withdrawals. And it's more than the ending cash reserve balance at any point in history, even when adjusted for inflation. The Nebraska Examiner goes on to say, backers of the two tax measures, the property tax cut as well as the corporate and individual income tax cuts, rejected arguments that the state wouldn't be able to sustain such a large loss of tax revenue and would eventually be forced to cut state services or raise taxes to afford them. And, you know, I feel that's part of the winning game plan that they have. You know, we're cutting corporate and individual revenues collection, but where are we going to look at in the future years? Are we going to go back into the cash reserve? Oh, no. I think we're going to cut a lot of the essential state programs that our working Nebraskans families depend on. So I believe that is part of the strategy. My Republican colleagues also spurned concerns from opponents that the income tax cuts mainly benefited the most wealthy Nebraskans and corporations based out of state. And it's quoting Senator Linehan. She said, "This is not just for rich folks. This plan from the governor is huge, and it will touch every Nebraskan." LB 234 would increase the state tax credits provided against property tax payments, taking funding out of the state's 6 community colleges off the tax roll, altogether providing more than $1.3 billion of tax relief. And that's substantial. The one thing that I'm saddened, and I really commend Senator Bostar for fighting so hard for the child care tax credits. That is what young families want. Nebraska is facing a crisis. Our young people are leaving the state in droves. On average, 2,000 college-educated people, young people, leave Nebraska every year. And I must remind everyone, we're already ranked 39th in the bottom half of states trying to retain and attract our young people. Nebraska has one of the worst outmigration rankings in the country when it comes to young people leaving the state. Nebraska ranks very poorly. The University of Nebraska at Omaha Center for Public Affairs has studied Nebraska brain drain crisis. Of the 20 categories of reasons they left, tax relief was not even one of them. Young people are leaving the state due to low wages and the GOP's toxic culture wars. Nebraska's corporate-inspired so-called right to work for less law has suppressed wages for all of our citizens. The child care tax credit would have benefited so many Nebraska working families, but in the most recent revision of LB 754, they cut it. They cut it. One of the things that would have helped Nebraska families the most, I wish we could have reversed it. Instead of giving that corporate income tax and the individual income tax, if we took even half of that funding and put it towards child care tax credits, think of all the young families that would want to live in our state knowing that they would get
1 minute.
thank you, get some of that financial assistance that is one of the largest costs for any young family with one child or two children. It can be up to $21,000 a year on families. We know that both parents already work in our state of Nebraska. I wish we could have a redo. I wish we could come back and revisit this issue and make sure that we enact smart, conservative fiscal policy that's sustainable and benefits Nebraska working families. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Senator Raybold. Senator Kavanaugh, you're recognized, and this is your third opportunity.
Pardon. Thank you, Mrs. Well, I'm just tired this morning. Thank you, Madam President. I don't know if it's because I didn't have my normal amount of caffeine yesterday, but I'm just a little tired. Yeah, so this bill goes to 1054. I was just looking around. I saw that there was an amendment pending, and I didn't know if it was a substantive amendment or not. So it is? Oh, I withdraw my record.
So withdrawn. Mr. Clerk?
Madam President, Senator Linehan moved to amend with AM 1900.
Senator Linehan, you are welcome to open on your amendment. Senator Linehan?
Okay, what am I going to say here? Well, the speaker is helping me do my job here, thank goodness. I will respond a little bit to Senator Raybold's comments earlier about the survey. This came up, I think, on select file or general file on the underlying bill, not the A bill, 754. But the survey that she refers to, and I think it was a story in the Nebraska Examiner, didn't give tax relief or high taxes as one of the answers. So it's like taking a survey, and you've all taken surveys, I'm sure, and they give you options to say this is the reason why. Well, taxes weren't one of the reasons why, because it wasn't in the survey. But even though it wasn't mentioned in the survey, it still showed up in the results. So I will find that before we get to final reading on 754.
Thank you, Senator Linehan.
Thank you.
Senator Michaela Kavanaugh, you're recognized.
Thank you, Madam President. I didn't mean to cause chaos. I just saw that there was an amendment pending and got a little concerned and thought I better just do a little check-in, see if we needed that amendment or not. So, but per usual, I did cause chaos. Woo. Yeah, so I'm just wondering, we only have a few minutes left, and if we need to withdraw the amendment or if we need the amendment, I'm going to just talk until I know if I need to yield the time to withdraw the amendment. Do we need the amendment? We withdraw the amendment. Do we want to withdraw it or just vote it down? I'm just going to talk for the remaining 3 minutes, and somebody's going to come over here and they're going to tell me what we collectively as a group might want to do on AM 1900. So, I mean, gosh, I really jumped the shark with already talking about sports night. Am I right? Yeah. And cooking, my go-to topic. So I've talked before about how I'm a vegetarian. I am, but I do cook meat. And on Sunday, my only day home with the kids, I made taco bowls. So I made ground beef. And that is one of my specialties, is that I can brown hamburger meat and put taco seasoning on it. So I would say I am a good cook on a lot of things, but when it comes to meat, I keep it pretty straightforward. And this weekend, I was out at Platte River. The park was open like for free this weekend. I have a state park pass that I got on January 1st, where this is an entertaining story for people. Maybe you can blame my January 1st on the session. I had a head injury on January 1st. I fell while ice skating and hit my head very hard. Maybe this is like that whole season of Dallas where then the next season Bobby wakes up and it was all just a bad dream. I don't know. Am I in a dream state? Okay, I would like to yield the remainder of my time to Senator Linehan.
Senator Linehan, you're yielded 2 minutes, 12 seconds.
Thank you, Senator Kavanaugh. So I withdraw this amendment. No.
It's a strike session. I just called fiscal office. They told me this amendment needed to be adopted. This was the amendment to.
Brandon.
It is.
Okay, well, here I think his office staff needs to be on the floor when we're doing A. The office staff needs to be on the floor when we're doing A. The office staff needs to be on the floor when we're doing A. The office staff needs to be on the floor when we're doing A. So I would appreciate a green vote on AM 1900 and then the overlying bill 754A. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Linehan. Senator Linehan, for what purpose do you rise?
The clerk first for the motion.
Mr. Clerk, for a motion.
Madam President, Senator Linehan moved to invoke cloture on LB 754A pursuant to Rule 7, Section 10.
Senator Linehan, for what purpose do you rise?
Call the House, roll call, regular order.
There's been a request to place the House under call. The question is, shall the House go under call? All those in favor vote aye. All those opposed vote nay. Record, Mr. Clerk.
19 ayes, 3 nays, place House under call.
The House is under call. Senators, please record your presence. Those unexcused senators outside the chamber, please return to the chamber and record your presence. All unauthorized personnel, please leave the floor. The House is under call. All unexcused senators are now present. The question before the body is the motion for cloture. There's been a request for a roll call vote. Mr. Clerk, please call the roll.
Senator Aguilar, voting yes. Senator Albright, voting yes. Senator Arch, voting yes. Senator Armendariz, voting yes. Senator Ballard, voting yes. Senator Blood, voting yes. Senator Boston, voting yes. Senator Bostar, voting yes. Senator Bostelman, voting yes. Senator Brandt, voting yes. Senator Brewer, voting yes. Senator Breezy, voting yes. Senator John Kavanaugh, voting yes. Senator Michaela Kavanaugh, not voting. Senator Clements, voting yes. Senator Conrad, voting yes. Senator Day, Senator DeBoer, voting yes. Senator DeKay, voting yes. Senator Dorn, voting yes. Senator Dover, Senator Dungan, voting yes. Senator Erdman, voting yes. Senator Frederickson, voting yes. Senator Holleran, voting yes. Senator Hansen, voting yes. Senator Hardin, voting yes. Senator Holcroft, voting yes. Senator Hughes, voting yes. Senator Hunt, not voting. Senator Ibaugh, voting yes. Senator Jacobson, voting yes. Senator Kauth, voting yes. Senator Linehan, voting yes. Senator Lippincott, voting yes. Senator Lowe, voting yes. Senator McDonald, voting yes. Senator McKinney, Senator Mosier, voting yes. Senator Merman, voting yes. Senator Raybold, voting no. Senator Reapy, voting yes. Senator Sanders, voting yes. Senator Slama, voting yes. Senator Vargas, voting yes. Senator Von Gillern, voting yes. Senator Walls, Senator Wayne, voting yes. Senator Wishart, voting yes. Vote is 42 ayes, 1 nay. Mr. President, on the motion, Madam President, on the motion to vote cloture.
Cloture is invoked. The next vote will be on the addition of AM 1900 to LB 754A. All those in favor vote aye. There's been a request for a roll call vote. Mr. Clerk, please call the roll.
Senator Aguilar, voting yes. Senator Albright, voting yes. Senator Arch, voting yes. Senator Armendariz, voting yes. Senator Ballard, voting yes. Senator Blood, voting yes. Senator Boston, voting yes. Senator Bostar, voting yes. Senator Bostelman, voting yes. Senator Brandt, voting yes. Senator Brewer, voting yes. Senator Breezy, voting yes. Senator John Kavanaugh, voting yes. Senator Michaela Kavanaugh, not voting. Senator Clements, voting yes. Senator Conrad, voting yes. Senator Day, Senator DeBoer, voting yes. Senator DeKay, voting yes. Senator Dorn, voting yes. Senator Dover, Senator Dungan, voting yes. Senator Erdman, voting yes. Senator Frederickson, voting yes. Senator Holleran, voting yes. Senator Hansen, voting yes. Senator Hardin, voting yes. Senator Holcroft, voting yes. Senator Hughes, voting yes. Senator Hunt, not voting. Voting yes. Senator Linehan, voting yes. Senator Lippincott, voting yes. Senator Lowe, voting yes. Senator McDonald, voting yes. Senator McKinney, Senator Mosier, voting yes. Senator Merman, voting yes. Senator Raybold, voting no. Senator Reapy, voting yes. Senator Sanders, voting yes. Senator Slama, voting yes. Senator Vargas, voting yes. Senator Von Gillern, voting yes. Senator Walls, Senator Wayne, voting yes. Senator Wishart, voting yes. Vote is 42 ayes, 1 nay. Madam President, on the adoption of the amendment.
The amendment is adopted. The next vote is LB 754A to ENR engrossing. There's been a request for a roll call vote. All those in favor vote aye. All those opposed vote nay. Mr. Clerk, please call the roll.
Senator Aguilar, voting yes. Senator Albright, voting yes. Senator Arch, voting yes. Senator Armendariz, voting yes. Senator Ballard, voting yes. Senator Blood, voting yes. Senator Boston, voting yes. Senator Bostar, voting yes. Senator Bostelman, voting yes. Senator Brandt, voting yes. Senator Brewer, voting yes. Senator Breezy, voting yes. Senator John Kavanaugh, voting yes. Senator Michaela Kavanaugh, not voting. Senator Clements, voting yes. Senator Conrad, voting yes. Senator Day, Senator DeBoer, voting yes. Senator DeKay, voting yes. Senator Dorn, voting yes. Senator Dover, Senator Dungan, voting yes. Senator Erdman, voting yes. Senator Frederickson, voting yes. Senator Holleran, voting yes. Senator Hansen, voting yes. Senator Hardin, voting yes. Senator Holcroft, voting yes. Senator Hughes, voting yes. Senator Hunt, voting no. Senator Ibaugh, voting yes. Senator Jacobson, voting yes. Senator Kauth, voting yes. Senator Linehan, voting yes. Senator Lippincott, voting yes. Senator Lowe, voting yes. Senator McDonald, Voting yes, Senator McKinney. Senator Mosier. Voting yes, Senator Merman. Voting yes, Senator Raybold. Voting no, Senator Reapy. Voting yes, Senator Sanders. Voting yes, Senator Slama. Voting yes, Senator Vargas. Voting yes, Senator Von Gillern. Voting yes, Senator Walls. Senator Wayne. Voting yes, Senator Wishart. Voting yes. Votes 42 ayes, 2 nays, Madam President, on the advancement of the bill.
The bill is advanced. Mr. Clerk, for the next item, I raise the call.
Madam President, final reading Legislative Bill 565E. When the legislature left the bill pending was a recommit motion from Senator Hunt.
Senator Hunt would like to announce 60 4th through 6th grade students from Harrison Elementary in Omaha. Please stand to be recognized by your Nebraska Legislature. Members, we are now going to be on final reading. Please return to your seats. Senator Hunt, you are recognized for a 1-minute refresh on your motion.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The reason we filed these motions on these bills is because of the rules change that we accepted later this year, or earlier this year, and we're going to spend the next couple hours talking about the comments of Governor Pillen about LB 574 and how he says it doesn't go far enough and how we're just getting started and this is only the beginning. And so all of you can sit in your seats and hear about that. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Senator Hunt. Senator Bosselman, you're recognized.
Thank you, Madam President. Good morning, colleagues. Good morning, Nebraska. I figure we might as well talk about the bill and a few other things since it sounds like they're going to filibuster the bill. First off, this morning, I would like to recognize our EMS personnel across the state, our medical services, the emergency medical services folks who both volunteer. They're all professionals. There are those who volunteer and those who are on staff, but they're all professional EMS folks that provide a service to us in Nebraska that we cherish very much. And not everywhere in the state of Nebraska do we have coverage, and there's a lot of areas we have gaps. And I would encourage anyone across the state of Nebraska who would like to join the professionals of EMS who provide services across the state to please check into it. Please volunteer. We've done a lot of work to try to improve the opportunities that you have to provide the services for all of us as we live in Nebraska and as we travel across the state. Again, thank you to our EMS. This is EMS Week, and thank you to all those who serve. We're on LB 565, which is the committee priority bill for the Natural Resource Committee. LB 565 contains provisions of LB 217, LB 289, LB 395, LB 400, LB 425, LB 567, LB 568, and LB 723. I'll talk about a couple of them now on the mic, and I'll probably, if I can get back in, we will talk about maybe some more of the bills and what they do as time goes on. LB 217 will be the first one we'll talk about. LB 217 was actually Senator Hughes' bill to extend the sunset date for scrap tire recycling program. If you're not aware of that is a very important program to us across the state and our small communities and in our counties in general. So a lot of times we'll have, as we replace our tires on the farms or in towns, we don't always turn those in at the time, but this gives us an opportunity to turn those into a facility when we recycle those. So that scrap tire recycling program is really important. This just extends a sunset date out and provides for, allows us to utilize federal funding to keep that important program going across the state of Nebraska in our counties, in our towns and cities. I want to thank Senator Hughes for bringing that bill to the committee. LB 395 is the next bill. It was brought by Senator Erdman. It increases the compensation for members of the Oil and Gas Commission. This increase has no general fund impact. Basically, we have the commissioners that serve the Oil and Gas Commission, and this is funded by themselves. Those entities that are in the oil and gas business provide funding for that, and the funds that were used to pay the commissioners comes out of that fund. So we don't use tax dollars for that. It's a self-funding, if you will, and maybe Senator Urban can correct and add to that if you wanted to, but that is a self-funding. And actually, would Senator Urban yield to a question?
Senator Urban, when you yield?
Yes, I will.
Senator Urban, is that correct in how that's funded?
So did you ask me to explain how that is?
Yes, please.
Okay. What happened is several years ago, I had discovered that the Oil and Gas Commission were being compensated at $50 per meeting, and it had been that way since 1954. It's kind of a coincidence because I came up with an amendment to change their compensation to $500 per meeting, and Senator Dan Hughes had proposed a $300 increase, and we agreed to a $400 increase.
1 minute.
With a total for the year, total compensation of $4,000. And because of the cleanup necessary on abandoned wells, they've been meeting more than the 8 or 9 meetings a year that would get them to $4,000. And so the last 4 or 5 meetings of the year, they met for free. And this is an opportunity for us to take away that limit, but also tie it to CPI so we don't have to adjust that again. And Senator Bossman, you correctly stated there's no tax dollars involved in this. It's their own money. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Erdman. The next bill is, if I get back on the mic again here, I'll talk about, I think, LB 289 next, and LB 565 itself, which is carrying bill, and LB 568. LB 289 does clarify that the...
Time, Senator.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Bossman Erdman. Senator Erdman, you're recognized.
Thank you very much, Madam President. So let me just finish up a little bit on that, and then I'll yield the rest of my time to Senator Bostelman. But anyway, so what we have done is we've had numerous conversations with the commission. The commission was eligible for a grant for $25 million to clean up existing wells that the oil companies have abandoned, and there's no fund there to clean those up. And so when they were eligible for the $25 million and they received it, then they had numerous meetings trying to describe and understand what needed to be cleaned up, and therefore they exceeded their limit of the $4,000 per year. These are individuals who are trained in this profession, and they spend a lot of time doing what they're doing, and I thought they should be fairly compensated. So this is an opportunity for us to allow them to use their funding, which is basically a checkoff, to compensate those who spend their time regulating their agency. And so with that, I'd yield the rest of my time to Senator Bosselman.
Senator Bossman, you're yielded 3 minutes, 55 seconds.
Thank you, Madam President. Again, LB 289 clarifies that the Municipal Energy Agency of Nebraska has authority to own and operate advanced metering technology. So the MEAN is a cooperative that's part of the state of Nebraska. A lot of our small towns and some of our medium-sized towns belong to the MEAN cooperative, where they purchase their power from. And what this does is allow MEAN, the organization itself, to actually it clarifies some language that the Attorney General said need to be clarified in statute, and allows them to ask for some grant funding, federal funding, to help out with some smart technology that then can be utilized by their customers in the state of Nebraska, the cities and that. This bill was overwhelmingly supported by those who came in. I believe it was Crete or Beatrice, one of the two, came in actually and supported this and explained the technology that could be brought and how this will help out their communities as they manage their energy use within the cities. Very positive thing for the communities and for MEAN itself, and it was well supported. I believe we did not have any opposition to that itself. The next bill I want to talk about is LB 565, which is a carrying bill. And this is an important bill. This is part of the A bill that we have. It allocates $250,000 from 2023 to 2024 and 24 to 25 from general funds to the Department of Economic Development for the purpose of providing grants to the Nebraska Hydrogen Hub Industry Work Group to continue their work. These grants would be utilized by the group for engineering and modeling work to prepare and support the group in the next step of their submission for one of the Department of Energy's regional clean hydrogen hub designations and associated funding. The opportunity we have with 565 and the hydrogen hub is significant. It's a possible $1 billion opportunity that our state has, joining with 2 other states in the hydrogen hub opportunity, which NPPD has been a strong leader in the hydrogen hub process. And in this grant application, we are now one of 33, I think it is, states that the Department of Energy has said you can continue on and give us, I believe it's a final or near final RFP or proposal for them to consider for one of, it's either 8 or 9 hubs, I think it is, in the state in the United States. This is very important to Nebraska. And to our ag industry as well as our energy industry. The next bill I want to talk about is LB 568. It would establish the Nuclear and Hydrogen Development Act, which directs the Department of Economic Development to establish a work group whose members would be appointed by the governor. The work group will identify workforce needs of the advanced nuclear and hydrogen industry and collaboratively recommend educational programming to train and develop a workforce for critical to our nation's growing energy needs. LB 568 also appropriates $200,000 funds, which the work group may utilize for travel and lodging reimbursements as well as per diem for when the working group is engaged in business. This is critical to our nation. This is critical to what we have. Monolith, as you know, Monolith Industries.
Time, Senator.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Erdman. Senator Bossman. Senator Bossman, you're next in the queue.
Thank you. As we continue with this, Monolith, as I was saying, is a critical part of this. So many of you may know Monolith has started with their new development, new technology that they use by Hallam in their plant that started there. They have their first, we call it reactor, that has been built, which does carbon black. But they're going to have a huge expansion program going on. And it's good. Once that in the next 3 years, they're going to need, I think it's 200 or 300 new employees. And those employees are critical to what they do because they're going to need folks in the electrical and the pipe fitting and AI and technologies and those type of things. And right now, we don't have a whole lot of those programs in place, teaching those type of opportunities here in Nebraska. So what the work group's going to do, as well as if we get into SMR, small modular reactors, advanced nuclear technology nationwide, there's a lack of workforce in both these areas. So this spreads out not only in these new industries that continue to grow and build in our state, but it also provides the opportunity to look at how we develop those same workforce needs, trade needs, technical needs that don't exist now, and using our community colleges as well as using our state colleges and working with stakeholders in the industry, both in the hydrogen industry and the nuclear industry, and the national industry. This morning, I actually had a meeting with a member from the Department of Energy. I also had a meeting with a member from EPRI, specifically beginning to talk about what those needs are and how we develop that in the state so that we become a state that has the opportunity most to develop highly skilled in trades, technical folks that we need, can use in multiple industries across the state of Nebraska. So this helps us in a great deal in those areas. This provides critical think tank for that, makes that recommendation as we move forward in these industries. But this will also go into any industry that needs those trades. So this is a great benefit for the state of Nebraska and what we do and how we move forward, especially for our trade schools, also apprentice programs, internship programs, how we develop it, how we grow. We work with a national organization already at the hearing that does this in another state. They are ones that provide a lot of this trade skills nationwide, and they have a very good opportunity working knowledge of what those needs are. We've come up with an original 9 or 10 that we can look at. Of those 9 or 10, there's a certain amount of skills training that we can do right away, but there's others we can build on. Now we need to take a look nationally with recommendations coming from DOE, coming from EPRI, coming from NEI, which is the Nuclear Energy Institute, coming from hydrogen folks, how we build this together, how we move this forward in a workforce development to make Nebraska a center point, a focal point for new industry growth and technology and in trades, and how that's going to benefit our state. And then also how we utilize this knowledge working into our high schools. So we all know what STEM is. STEM is working on our engineering type of work, mathematics, those type of, you have math counts, those type of things. What we're also going to look at is also going to look like how do we reach out now into our high schools, junior high. How do we start connecting with students at that level, those kids, to start building them, their interest and their skills in all these trades, but also professionally as well.
1 minute.
Thank you. 1 minute? Thank you. So we also can go, at the time it's going to be a professional, so we do need the engineers as well. So engineering will be another part of this that we're going to be looking at, but really we're looking at doing a very interesting footprint in the state of Nebraska, a model that we could use here in Nebraska to build from, to be a unique opportunity for the state, for both industries and what we do. I think it's a great thing for the state of Nebraska. These are a couple of items that we have in this bill that I think will drive Nebraska a long ways down the line and is good for Nebraska. I would appreciate your opposition, the red for the motion to recommit. And I also appreciate your green vote on LB 565E. This is something that's really looking forward and trying to meet the needs in the future of things that we need to build upon. We already have a really good community college program system in the state. Now this is the way that we build upon
Time,
that.
Senator.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Bosselman. Senator Decay, you're recognized.
Thank you, Madam President. I would rise in support of LB 565, and I would also like to comment a little bit on Senator Bostelman's 568. This is vitally important to the future of our country as far as where we're going with our hydrogen development, with our nuclear development. And this helps us be able to prepare young people to understand and see and believe in the possibilities that are out there when it comes to especially nuclear development as a baseload generation throughout our country. And if we want to be a carbon-free nation where people are leaning toward that direction, our nuclear commitment has got to be essential going forward. It's clean energy, and it is, as far as a baseload product, we have to have nuclear in our arsenal to achieve that carbon-free footprint if we want to get there at some point in time. Hydrogen development with Helm, with a monolith down at Helm, that will help grow our independence on other factors where carbon black is developed out of petroleum products. Carbon black with monolith that's developed out of natural gas. It's a clean. The residue off of that is hydrogen, and we can use that to either develop fertilizer. We can use it as a fuel source to run a generating plant for electricity. There's a lot of possibilities with that. So, and working with EPRI through the university is quintessential to letting kids have the opportunity to learn and grow and understand industry as it's changing every day on that front. And with that, if he would want it, I would yield the rest of my time back to Senator Bostelman.
Senator Bosselman, you're yielded 2 minutes, 40 seconds.
Thank you, Senator Kay. As Senator Hansen was asking me off the side here a little bit more about this. So the hydrogen hub, actually the hydrogen, the monolith is existence now, has been working. They have their pilot plant, their test plant that worked out, and now they're expanding. The other thing we're talking about in this was advanced nuclear opportunities. So there's two things that work there that's currently going through the NRC and DOE, is the small modular reactors and the micro reactors. So your small modular reactors are things, we actually did a feasibility study for NPPD last year. They're working on it. We funded that for them to do a feasibility study to see if there's places within the state of Nebraska where that might be to actually utilize a small modular reactor. So how that might be utilized as standalone itself. Or you may have a coal-fired plant that is aging out that needs to be decommissioned. You could take an SMR or a micro and you could place it next to it on site, if you will, decommission the coal plant and start up the SMR or the micro. And basically you transition your workers from your coal plant to this advanced technology, which is clean, zero carbon technology that's out there that we can utilize to meet the needs of the grid. And what's interesting with that is that you can ramp it up and ramp it down very quickly. You can meet the needs as it affects, as the grid changes.
1 minute.
It's an immediate fix to that or meets that needs immediately. So the training that we have going on here, so part of it is simulators as well. I had the opportunity to look at a SMR simulator when I was out in Washington, D.C. back in December. That's something we potentially would like to bring here. It's a simulator, it's computer programs we could put in both for, say, monolith type of a design, but also for SMR or micro that we could utilize. Doesn't exist right now in this part of the country at all. This would be something that's needed for training for operators. That would be part of the work that's already training being done, some of that being done here in Nebraska on operators. And this would really benefit us a great deal in getting those operators hands-on training on the new technology that's out there, especially when we get into the advanced nuclear world. We do train now, have operators now being trained on the old designs or current what's out there.
Time, Senator.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Decay and Senator Bosselman. Senator Bosselman, you're now recognized for your third opportunity.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So another bill I want to talk about is LB 400. Seems like this gets to be an opportunity to talk a lot about the bill, but that's fine. LB 400, as amended by AM 878, was introduced by Senator Brewer. It allows for the taking of nest predators and mountain lions that cause damage to livestock. What we have is, especially in western part of the state of Nebraska, what we're seeing sometimes with mountain lions are coming into a farm, coming into the house, into the yard, if you will, where livestock's kept, and they're preying on horses, sheep, whatever it might be. What this allows is that if that's occurring, that mountain lion could be taken to ensure that you protect that livestock that you have. That's what it does. And on the nest predators, what we're doing there is, as we know, our pheasant population, our turkey population, those populations continue to decline in the state. And what this does is if a landowner or their agent knows that they have nests and they have predators on there, it allows them to control those predators by taking those predators out of the ecosystem, out of the system there, to protect those nesting birds, to try to improve the population, as well as for quail, prairie chickens, those type of things. LB 425, another bill, updates several sections of Chapter 37, which governs the Game and Parks Commission. First, the bill increases a quorum for the Game and Parks Commission from 4 members to 5, as they have a 9-member board. The bill also increases the caps on non-resident hunting and fishing permits. The caps do not create an automatic fee increase. Those require a full promulgation of regulations by the agency and approval by the governor. The increases and caps are listed in the committee statement for LB 425. The bill also clarifies that if the individual receives an auction permit for a mountain sheep, we would know those as bighorn sheep. In the statute, it's mountain sheep. It does not count against an individual's lifetime total of one mountain sheep. Further, the number of people allowed to apply for a special permit in one application increases from 2 to 6, and oftentimes they call those buddy permits. So if you have a family maybe that likes to hunt and wants to go hunt in a certain area, say for a deer, they can apply for a special permit where they can hunt. If one draws, they all draw, and so that helps that out a little bit more in those type of situations. Next, the bill adds language so the Game and Parks Commission can put limitations on non-resident permits in order for a special depredation season for deer, antelope, or elk. This change would not affect non-resident landowners seeking permit. So what happened? We had depredation permits that were given out in the western part of the state this last year, and there were some complaints, more than a few, I think, from landowners, people who live there, saying there's a lot of non-residents coming out here, and we're having a problem with them not asking permission and causing us some problems. So what this does is just helps limit those permits if need be, and make sure if you're an out-of-state landowner that you still can have access to that permit. And our resident landowners, residents of the state of Nebraska, have access to those permits as well. But it's a way that Game and Parks felt that they could help improve that situation, especially when we have a lot of non-resident hunters coming into an area and bothering a lot of landowners and causing some issues for them out there. LB 425 also increases the maximum area allowed to be licensed as a game breeding and controlled shooting area from 2% to 5% of the county's total acreage. And finally, the bill would allow Game and Parks to issue permits to harvest elk. Currently, only deer are allowed in areas of the state designated as game refuges when a number of elk has been determined to be detrimental to the habitat of the refuge or to the adjacent privately owned real or personal property. There's only one refuge right now in the state of Nebraska that this would affect. Again, I would ask for your red vote on the recommit motion. I ask for your green vote on LB 565E. As you see, there's a lot of things in this. These were our committee priority bills put in together. We picked, I think, some of the best bills we could out of the committee and brought them to the floor. And I think these do a lot of good for the state of Nebraska, and would just ask for your green vote. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Senator Bosselman. Senator Kavanaugh, Michaela Kavanaugh, you're recognized.
Thank you, Madam President. So Nebraska Public Media had a story. Well, they always have a story. Yesterday, senators debate photo ID, Pillen signs abortion trans health bill. It says it's a 4-minute read. I wonder if I can read it in less than 4 minutes or if I can make it take 10 minutes. All right. The Nebraska Legislature moved toward approving photo ID requirements to vote Monday, despite criticism that they're not strict enough, and Governor Jim Pillen signed the restrictions on abortion and transgender health care into law. Last November, Nebraska voters approved a ballot initiative requiring a photo ID in order to vote, but they left it up to the legislature to fill in the details of how that should work. Monday, lawmakers debated 2 different versions. One was supported by the Government, Military, and Veteran Affairs Committee. It would require voters to present photo IDs with certain exceptions. If they voted by mail, they could include a photocopied ID or a driver's license or state ID number. If they vote in person, they would have to present a photo ID unless they are unable to obtain an ID due to disability, illness, lack of birth certificate or other documents, or a religious objection to being photographed. Senator Danielle Conrad, a member of that committee, defended its version as following voters' wishes, even though she opposed the ballot measure. I vehemently and firmly disagree with voter ID. However, I equally find it sacrosanct our duty to facilitate and carry out the will of the people, even when we disagree with it, Conrad said. But State Senator Julie Slama, who helped lead the campaign to get voter approval of the ID requirement, said the legislation does not go far enough. Slama wants stronger requirements for the Secretary of State to verify voter citizenship. She also wants mail-in votes to be notarized or witnessed by another voter attesting to the voter's identity. And she wants a specific definition of what would be a reasonable impediment that could accept someone from having to show a photo ID in requiring citizenship. The lay of the land is this: those who have opposed voter ID and done everything they can to block voter ID and the implementation of voter ID are now in control of voter ID. Look at the groups supporting the Evnen amendments, Slama said. The Evnen Slama referred to is the Secretary of State, Robert Evnen, who supported the voter ID ballot measure, but Senator Tom Brewer, chair of the Government, Military, and Veterans Affairs Committee, objected to calling it the Evnen Amendment. This is not Bob Evnen's amendment. He just helped us. He has showed us what we need to do to make sure that, for one, he can execute what we're being tasked as far as voter ID, Brewer said. Both Brewer and Slama appealed to their colleagues exhausted by a grueling filibuster-filled session in their desire not to have to return later this year. Brewer said with only 9 business days left in the legislative session, senators have to act. It is what we have to do in order to fulfill our obligation to the people of Nebraska. And whether we like it or not, we are out of time. And if we decide that this is such a horrible bill that we can't deal with it, then we will be in special session, he said. But Slama argued that that's what would happen if senators voted to cut off debate and advance the committee's version of the bill. It does not follow the plain language of the constitutional amendment. It will end up in court and it will lose. And we will be back here again in special session because unlike everything else besides the budget, we are constitutionally obligated to put together a framework in this session that fulfills the will of the voters, she said. As debate continued, it appeared clear that the committee version had more support. An amendment containing it was adopted 32-3, while an amendment containing Slama's version was rejected 22-8. A first round vote on the bill was expected later Monday. Elsewhere in the Capitol, how much time do I have left?
1 minute, 5 seconds.
Can I just go to my next time?
Yes. Senator Michaela Cavanaugh, you're recognized.
Is this my last time? Great. Okay. Elsewhere in the Capitol, Governor Jim Pillen signed LB 574, the bill restricting both abortion and certain medical procedures for transgender youth. Surrounded by supporters of LB 574, Pillen praised the legislation. It's about protecting our kids and saving babies, pure and simple. You don't want to listen to all the other stuff that people are trying to make it out to be. It's 2 simple things, Pillen said. The bill outlaws most abortions after 12 weeks of pregnancy, effective immediately. Another section, effective in October, prohibits surgery for those under 19 to transition to a different gender. It also gives the state's chief medical officer the ability to restrict the use of puberty blockers and hormones. Parental consent is currently already required for medical care for minors. Pillen suggested that recommending medical treatment for gender dysphoria among young people is diabolical. We believe in protecting our kids, making sure that they, parents and kids, don't get duped into the silliness that if you do this, you're going to become happy. That is absolutely Lucifer at its finest, and we believe this law protects and allows our children to make decisions on their own when they become of age, he said. Wow. Wow. The governor of Nebraska thinks that parents are being duped in getting their children life-saving medical care by Lucifer. Yeah. By Lucifer. Diabolical. Gender dysphoria among young people is diabolical, and we are being duped by Lucifer. And 33 people in this body made it possible for him to sign that into law and make those horrible comments about the parents of Nebraska and the medical community of Nebraska. Your Nebraska legislature believes that you have been duped by Lucifer, that you don't love your child, And that's why you are giving your child the care that they need. No, you've been duped by Lucifer. And it's diabolical. I am so grateful for when people say what's in their hearts, when people show us who they are. So I am grateful to the governor of this state for telling us all publicly what he thinks about the LGBTQ community, what he thinks about trans people. The governor said that he's not done, that this body is not done. This is just the beginning. All the times that I stood on this microphone and said that we were on the path towards a genocide of a population of people, the governor has confirmed that for us. This is just the beginning. What you did on Friday, what was signed into law yesterday, is just the beginning.
1 minute.
It is not the end, it is the beginning. And as the comments in the newspaper were about the fact that we needed to do voter ID, we needed to do the budget, we got tax cuts on the docket here, but it is day 83. And you are seeking to eradicate a population of people through legislation. So, 7 days here and 60 next. Then it's bye, Felicia, to so many of you. And I cannot wait for that. I cannot wait when the people of Nebraska vote you out of here. Because you have been duped by Lucifer.
Time, Senator, but you're next in the queue, and this is your third opportunity.
Thank you, Madam President. I made a mistake this morning. It was on the last bill. I did my default setting. My default setting is to be helpful. My default setting is to make sure that process is followed and what needs to get done gets done. I made a mistake. I'm not going to do that again. I'm not going to make that mistake again. I'm not going to go to my default setting of being nice to the people in this room. I'm not going to go to my default setting of being a collaborator. I'm not going to go to my default setting of trying to make sure that the process of good, strong public policy happens. I'm going to go to my new setting of being an obstructionist. Because if Friday taught me no lessons, I certainly learned them with the governor's remarks yesterday, that obstruction is the only tool I have. The only tool I have. And if you think that these Christmas tree packages that you got through this year are going to happen next year, you are wrong. There will be no hitching rides. There will be no standing aside for amendments. The governor has made it clear that this is a war on trans people. And the people that showed up for that signing alongside him and the 33 people who signed that bill, voted for that bill, have waged war. And your legislation is going to be casualties of that war. My new setting is obstructionist. Pure and simple. So thank you, Governor Pillen, for your deeply, deeply ill-informed insults to the parents of Nebraska. You just reminded me why I've been doing what I have been doing for as long as I've been doing it, and why I have to keep doing it. Foreign-born Huskers contribute 8% of state economic input, report says. Nebraska immigrants and refugees seen as potential, quote, economic powerhouse and workforce supply not fully tapped. Well, of course, we have to have immigrants and refugees because people don't want to be here anymore. This is from the Nebraska Examiner. Immigrants and refugees contribute 8% of the state's overall economic output and have potential to grow into what one policy expert called an economic powerhouse that helps fill unmet workforce demand felt more deeply in Nebraska than in many states. That's really sizable portion of our economy, Rebecca Firestone, executive director of Nebraska's Open Sky Policy Institute, said of a demographic she described as often hidden and underestimated. And we're not tapping full potential. She and other Nebraska policy experts and community leaders commented in light of a new report by the nonprofit Nonpartisan Immigrant Research Initiative that delved into state-centric data about the foreign-born. According to the IRI, more than 145,000 immigrants and refugees live in Nebraska.
1 minute.
Thank you, Madam President. They account for 9% of the labor force and 8% of state earnings. The analysis was based on 5-year census data and includes people born in another country and living in the U.S., no matter their legal status. While Nebraska's foreign-born are represented across the economic spectrum, the report revealed a disproportionate share, 37%, working in low-wage jobs such as the service and production industries, compared to the 24% share of the state's U.S.-born workers who share the same lower wages. That puts Nebraska among 10 states with the largest share of foreign-born workers who earn less than 2/3 of the median wage. On the other hand, the IRI data shows that 8% of Nebraska's foreign-born workers are in the upper wage earner category. Inclusive targeted policies. Saying immigration is the key to Nebraska growth, IRI and Open Sky highlight
Time,
the need.
Senator.
Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Senator Michaela Cavanaugh. Senator Hunt, you're recognized.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would like to yield my time to Senator Michaela Cavanaugh.
Senator Cavanaugh, you are yielded 4 minutes, 53 seconds.
Thank you, Senator Hunt. If anybody else wants to yield me time, I'm happy to take it. I'm out of my turns on this motion to recommit, though I have filed a motion to reconsider the vote, so it's fine either way. Potato, potato. This goes to, we start at 11:04. If we adjourn at noon and come back at 1, we usually start at 1:15. So that'll take us to 2:15, 2:19-ish. We're not adjourning for lunch? We're working through lunch?
Cloture is at 12:09 on this bill.
Oh, did we, it's 1 hour?
We began at a different day.
Oh, thank you. That's so helpful. When did we begin this? Well, I guess I can look and see when we began it. 565. Well, that just changes all my math for the day. My math is way off. Okay. Placed on final reading. Did we do it on May 19th? I'm going to have to look. All right. We did do it on May 19th. I know that because I filed a floor amendment on May 19th. And so I thought, well, that must have been the day that we did this bill or started this bill. So 12, what time? I'm sorry, Madam President,
12:09.
12:09. Thank you. Well, guess we're going to just start lunch a little late, but okay. Back to what I was reading, foreign-born. Okay, so, but again, I still have a motion to reconsider the motion to recommit. So if people don't want to yield me time, that's cool too. Okay, Inclusive targeted policies, saying immigration is a key to Nebraska's growth. IRI and Open Sky highlight the need for more inclusive and targeted policies to improve opportunities for those who move to the Husker State. I find that phrase interesting. I'm just going to look and see who. Oh, Cindy Gonzalez wrote this. I'll have to follow up with Cindy as to why she calls it the Husker State. I just think it's an interesting turn of phrase. I mean, we are the Husker State, Cornhuskers, the football team. I just seeing it in an article like that. I'm always interested in editorial choices. And so just pondering out loud, the Husker State. Okay. Anyways, Open Sky, a think tank that conducts Nebraska-focused fiscal research, cited a research study by the Federal Reserve Bank of Kansas City, which said that international residents historically have been a larger component of Nebraska population growth than incoming migration from other states. From the 1990s through 2015, immigration to Nebraska increased annually by about 5%, but starting in 2017, immigration to the Husker State, as well as the nation, fell steadily. Had Nebraska continued to address residents from abroad at the same rate prior to 2016, Federal Reserve economics Nate Kaufman and John McCoy said the state's population by last year may have increased by an additional 19,000 individuals. And here's a quote: "If there is an overrepresentation of a group in poverty, that is problematic." That's from Lena. Oh, I'm going to say your last name wrong. I apologize.
1 minute.
Lavinia Stover, Heartland Worker Center. Thank you, Madam President. The Economist said that in addition to wooing talent from across the country, immigration is key to addressing Nebraska's labor shortage, which they said is more pronounced than in many other states. I'm going to read that part again. The Economist said that in addition to wooing talent from across the country, immigration is key to addressing Nebraska's labor shortage, which they said is more pronounced than in many other states. Well, good thing we have people-friendly policies in Nebraska, right? As the labor force for most demographic groups has largely recovered to or exceeded pre-pandemic levels, external sources of labor supply may be significant in addressing ongoing worker shortages, said their report on Nebraska's labor.
Time, Senator.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Michaela Cavanaugh. Senator Conrad, you're recognized.
Thank you, Madam President. I yield my time to Senator Cavanaugh if she so desires.
Senator Cavanaugh, you're yielded 4 minutes, 53 seconds.
Why, thank you, Senator Conrad and Madam President. As the labor force for most demographic groups has largely recovered to or exceeded pre-pandemic levels, external sources of labor supply may be significant in addressing ongoing worker shortages, said their report on Nebraska's labor scarcity. Josie Schaefer of the University of Nebraska at Omaha's Center for Public Affairs Research says her census-based research shows foreign-born people in Nebraska with a higher labor participation rate than the U.S.-born population, about 73% versus 69%. Perhaps more pertinent to the current labor crunch, Schaefer said, is that low-wage service and production jobs are more likely to be filled by the foreign-born. Also, are the jobs that today have a high rate of openings in Nebraska. So, this population is crucial to our economy and filling the jobs we have open, she said. Up to 80,000 jobs unfilled. The spotlight on immigration comes as the Nebraska Chamber of Commerce and Industry and an Omaha Together One community-led coalition also steps up efforts to urge a more open door to foreign-born workers. Brian Sloan, president of the statewide business chamber, says that up to 80,000 jobs are unfilled in Nebraska, a challenging scenario for employers, given that the state has one of the highest labor participation and lowest unemployment rates in the nation. It's because we're hardworking, even though we like to say that poor people are lazy. They're not. They're working. We just don't pay them well. That's not in the article. That's just sidebar. Maybe I should have said that. Sidebar. Okay. Sloan believes that workforce needs across the country at some point are going to demand that Congress change laws to allow greater flow of legal immigration. It will be a question of which states are able to attract and retain immigrants, he said, adding that Nebraska should be ready with improved affordable housing, childcare, and other services that entice workers and families. Joke's on him, am I right? We're not going to do that stuff. We're just going to take away parental rights and medical decision making. We don't care about childcare. We're not going to help with that. Affordable housing, what? No, that's not us. But if we want to have your rights taken away as a parent, move to Nebraska. We're diabolical and we follow Lucifer. That's our new state slogan. Nebraska, Lucifer driven. Firestone said Nebraska has room to improve policies that make it easier for new arrivals to thrive. She pointed to 2 measures before state lawmakers. Legislative Bill 199, for example, proposes to amend Nebraska's Driver's License Act to provide a driving privilege card for certain foreigners authorized to be in the U.S. Introduced by Senator Tom Brewer of Gordon, the bill aimed originally at Ukrainian refugees who settled in Nebraska but are ineligible for an ordinary driver's license, has advanced to the full legislature for discussion. It actually was amended onto another bill. I don't remember now what bill it was amended onto, but I recall that happening.
1 minute.
Thank you. Kind of late at night, in the evening, maybe not late at night, in the evening, that I withdrew motions that I had on the board so that we could amend Senator Brewer's bill into another bill. Because that's when I wasn't being an obstructionist. Anywho, LB 62, introduced by State Senator Michaela Cavanaugh, would provide reimbursement for translation and interpretation services under state's medical assistance program. Such services are currently mandated under the Medicaid program, but not reimbursed. Guess what? It didn't get out of committee. Shocking, I know. Yeah. That measure, however, did not make it out of the legislature's committee stage. Of course it didn't. I introduced it. I actually haven't talked about much of the legislation I introduced
Time,
this
Senator.
year. Thank you.
Senator Hunt, you're recognized, and this is your last opportunity before your close.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll yield my time to Senator Kavanaugh.
Senator Kavanaugh, you're yielded 4 minutes, 55 seconds.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So if just 2 more people or 1 person 2 more times wants to yield me time, then we don't have to vote on this and then go to another motion, which means everybody can just vote at the end. Or we would have 2 votes we would have the vote to recommit to committee. So everybody would have to come and vote. And then we go back to talking and then everybody have to come and vote again like 5 minutes later. So potato to me, but I am a process person. I'm also like to help people with logistics and planning. And so I'm kind of like, hey, if y'all don't want to just keep coming back or making people who are outside the chamber come back to vote when they're just going to have to vote on the whole thing in 5 minutes, I like to give you a heads up on that. And Senator Hunt has given me all of her times. So, yeah. I was saying this article talks about one of my bills, which I appreciate, didn't know it was going to. And I haven't talked about any of the bills I introduced this year beyond the TANF bill that I introduced. And I actually introduced several very good things this year that were on a fast road to nowhere. One of them is a juvenile justice integrated data system, something that I had been working on with the university that I started working on several years ago with former Senator Brad Ashford, who is a dear friend and a mentor to me. I had some that were supporting our first responders, an expansion of coverage for firefighters for cancer diagnosis. The way it is right now is they have to really prove that the diagnosis is caused because of their work as a firefighter. And my bill would kind of flip that if you've worked for a certain amount of time as a firefighter and you are diagnosed with cancer, it is presumptive that it is because you are a firefighter. So it falls under workman's comp automatically. There are still avenues for it to be disputed, of course, but it makes it much easier for firefighters to get the workman's comp and the care that they need than the current process. So that's another bill I introduced this year that went nowhere. So, God, I think I introduced 28 bills. So I guess over the next couple of days, I could spend time reading about all of them to you. My staff did a lot of great work on these bills, so probably worth it. Okay, a lot of gaps. This is Leah. Is it Lee? Is it Leah? Is it Leia? I'm going to say Leah. Whitney Chavez, founder of the Omaha-based World Speaks, sees language and culture gaps so great that she built a nonprofit around trying to bridge those differences. The organization, founded in 2016, offers language courses, translation and interpretation services, growing to the point of a new headquarters move planned this summer. Whitney Chavez, noting that 109 languages are represented in Omaha public schools, said the area has a ways to go to become a place where non-English speaking residents can thrive. There are just a lot of gaps in our community, she said, adding that language accessibility services are among those that make an area inviting to new arrivals. Lena, I am sorry, Lena. I know I am mispronouncing your last name because I am terrible at pronunciation. Treslavenia Stover, executive director of the statewide Heartland Workers Center, said she was not surprised to see the IRI findings. She said that immigrants do much of the heavy lifting for some of Nebraska's biggest agricultural and production-based industries. What is concerning to her, though, is that when foreign-born workers become an underclass. If there is an overrepresentation of a group in poverty, that is problematic, Stover said. States vary in services and benefits offered to the foreign-born, as well as to subsets of that group who lack permanent legal status. While Nebraska allows undocumented students who attend and graduated from local high schools.
Time, Senator.
Thank you.
Senator John Kavanaugh, you're recognized.
I would yield my time to Senator Michaela Kavanaugh.
Senator Michaela Kavanaugh, you yielded 4 minutes, 56 seconds.
Thank you, Madam President. Thank you, Senator John Kavanaugh. States vary in services and benefits offered to the foreign-born, as well as to subsets of that group who lack permanent legal status. While Nebraska allows undocumented students who attended and graduated from local high schools to pay the same tuition as in-state classmates, it has not taken the step that some other states have, offering state financial aid. The National Legal Immigrant Center says that 80% of the nation's foreign-born population live in states with tuition equity laws or policies. Ooh. Well, that's an interesting enticement right there. Open Skies Firestone said state leaders often talk about how to attract people to Nebraska. Historically speaking, she said immigrants come to Nebraska. Last year, Nebraska was among the top 3 states for the share of refugees resettled per capita. It's a potential economic powerhouse for the state, Firestone said. Huskers, so this is another, sorry. I don't know if this is a separate article, underneath it, but I'll read it. Huskers top nation in refugee per capita over decade. Nebraska ranks #1 in the nation for the share of refugees resettled over the past decade compared to the overall state population, according to an analysis by the Immigration Research Initiative. I need one more time to talk if we don't want to go to a vote on the motion to recommit before we go to the cloture motion. Just one more. Okay. Refugees are a subset of the foreign born. They are people who the U.S. government has determined have a well-funded fear of persecution. They've gone through extensive vetting according to the IRI and typically have waited years before arriving in the U.S. Each year, a cap on the number of refugee arrivals is set by presidential determination. The IRI said refugee arrivals during President Donald Trump's administration declined from 85,000 in 2016 to 12,000 in 2020. In 2022, the total climbed to 25,000. By the measure of refugee arrivals per 100,000 people in a state over a 10-year period, Nebraska topped the list, followed by North Dakota, Idaho, Kentucky, and South Dakota. For 2022 alone, Nebraska ranked third among states for refugee resettlement per capita. Kentucky was first, Idaho second. Looking at raw numbers, states that received the most refugees over the 10-year period were Texas, California, New York, and Michigan. Top countries of origins for refugees nationally over that time frame include Myanmar, Burma, Iraq, Bhutan, Dominican Republic of Congo, Somalia, Iran, Syria, Cuba, and Ukraine. The U.S. Refugee Resettlement Program is a public-private partnership of the Bureau of Population, Refugees, and Migration, the Department of Health and Human Services, and 9 national resettlement agencies. Cindy Gonzalez, Nebraska Examiner, senior reporter. So I've been reading from the Nebraska Examiner most of this morning. They do a great job of covering what's happening in our state. So they are an online publication. And
1 minute.
Thank you. And they're a nonprofit. So they are not driven by clicks and sensationalism. So I very much appreciate them as a resource, even if I'm criticizing them, which I have been known to do from time to time. Yet somehow I'm still on speaking terms with them. I don't know why, but they still talk to me from time to time. And I very much appreciate their work and their journalism. And I think if you are looking for a good resource, there's lots of good local resources, but the fact that they're a nonprofit news outlet, I think you really can see that reflected in their work, that it is less hyperbolic in whatever direction. Thank you, Madam President.
Senators Day and Reapy would like to recognize 60 fourth graders from Holland Heights Elementary in Omaha. Please stand and be recognized by your Nebraska senators. Senator John Kavanaugh, you're recognized.
I would yield my time to Senator Michaela Kavanaugh if she would like it.
Senator Michaela Kavanaugh, you're yielded 4 minutes, 56 seconds.
Thank you, Madam President. Thank you, Senator John Kavanaugh. I would like it. So I was saying, because they're a nonprofit news publication, that they are not driven by profits. Obviously, nonprofit, not driven by profits. And so their journalism has not been, directed by what is going to generate revenue. That is a good thing in journalism. It makes it less sensationalized. It makes it less hyperbolic. And what I was starting to say, in either direction, it makes it less hyperbolic towards the progressive movement, and it makes it less hyperbolic towards the conservative movement. And it really is, when you have this model of journalism and reporting, it starts to go back to the more standard of what journalism used to be. I will say that sometimes I have been known to push back that perhaps that's not the standard that I'm seeing reflected. And I appreciate the Nebraska Examiner's willingness, or at least them feigning willingness to hear my grievances. I don't know how else to say it. I have grievances. That's not shocking. I spend like days on end airing my grievances on the microphone. So I have grievances. I have grievances about everything. I'm really not that much of a downer generally. Outside of this place, I'm kind of fun. I hula hoop. I don't know that I've talked about my hula hooping. I am an excellent hula hooper. And yes, I do have routines. Multiple hula hoop routines, 2 different songs. There is no video that I'm aware of. I once did a contest. It's called the Rose of Tralee, and it's an Irish thing. And you had to do talent for the talent portion of this. It's an international thing, and it was very extensive. There was a whole interview process, and then the talent portion of it was the final day, and whoever won went to Ireland for the national festival, Rose of Tralee Festival. And they had people from all over the country and all over the world doing this. So my talent was hula hooping. It was at a bar, Kelly's Irish Times, I think, on Capitol Hill. It was hula hooping to the song Come On Eileen, and I did chug very messily a Guinness while hula hooping to Come On Eileen. Guinness is not a chugging beverage, just FYI, and I do not, as a general rule, chug alcohol. That is not a good thing to do. It is not healthy or safe. I don't recommend it at all. But for this specific performance, I did, though I think about 1% of it actually made it into my mouth and the rest made it down my white shirt. So that was really, I'm really glad that digital media was not a thing at that time, even though I just described it to you all. But there's no video of it. So you can't even prove if I actually did what I just said I did. Maybe I just made it all up. Maybe it's Bobby Ewing's dream from Dallas. Ooh. All right, I think we're at about cloture. And then people, I'm sure, want to go to lunch. I hope if you're not in here, you probably need to get in here because you can't, we're on final reading. You can't do a call to the house. So if you did check out, come back and sit down because it has an E clause, so it needs 33, and you can't do a call of the House on cloture on final reading. So that's it. Folks, thank you very much, Madam President.
Thank you, Senators Kavanaugh. Mr. Clerk, you have a motion on your desk?
I do, Madam President. Senator Bostrom would move to invoke cloture pursuant to Rule 7, Section 10 on LB 565.
Senator Bosselman, for what purpose do you rise?
Member check-in, roll call vote, regular order, please.
Members, please return to your desks. We are on final reading. Members, please check in. All members are in their seats. The first motion is to invoke cloture. All those in favor vote aye, all those opposed vote nay. There's been a request for a roll call vote. Mr. Clerk, please call the roll.
Senator Aguilar, voting yes. Senator Albright, voting yes. Senator Arch, voting yes. Senator Armendariz, voting yes. Senator Ballard, voting yes. Senator Blood, voting yes. Senator Bosson, voting yes. Senator Bostar, Senator Bostelman, voting yes. Senator Brandt, voting yes. Senator Brewer, Voting yes, Senator Breezy. Voting yes, Senator John Kavanaugh. Voting yes, Senator Michaela Kavanaugh. Not voting, Senator Clements. Voting yes, Senator Conrad. Voting yes, Senator Day. Voting yes, Senator DeBoer. Voting yes, Senator DeKay. Voting yes, Senator Dorn. Voting yes, Senator Dover. Senator Duncan. Voting yes, Senator Erdman. Voting yes, Senator Frederickson. Voting yes, Senator Holleran. Voting yes, Senator Hansen. Voting yes, Senator Hardin. Voting yes, Senator Holcroft. Voting yes, Senator Hughes. Voting yes, Senator Hunt. Not voting, Senator Ibaugh. Voting yes, Senator Jacobson. Voting yes, Senator Kauth. Voting yes, Senator Linehan. Voting yes, Senator Lippincott. Voting yes, Senator Lowe. Voting yes, Senator McDonald. Voting yes, Senator McKinney. Senator Mosier. Voting yes, Senator Merman. Voting yes, Senator Raybold. Voting yes, Senator Reapy. Voting yes, Senator Sanders. Voting yes, Senator Slama. Voting yes, Senator Vargas. Voting yes, Senator Von Gillern. Voting yes, Senator Walls. Senator Wayne. Senator Wishart. Not voting. Vote is 41 ayes, no nays, Madam President, on the motion to invoke cloture.
The motion to invoke cloture is adopted. Members, the next vote is on the adoption of Senator Hunt's motion 654. There's been a request for a roll call vote. Mr. Clerk, please call the roll.
Senator Aguilar. Voting no, Senator Albright. Voting no, Senator Arch. Voting no, Senator Armendariz. Voting no, Senator Ballard. Voting no, Senator Blood. Voting no, Senator Boston. Voting no, Senator Bostar. Senator Bosselman. Voting no, Senator Brandt. Voting no, Senator Brewer. Voting no, Senator Breezy. Voting no, Senator John Kavanaugh. Voting no, Senator Michaela Kavanaugh. Not voting, Senator Clements. Voting no, Senator Conrad. Voting no, Senator Day. Voting no, Senator DeBoer. Voting no, Senator DeKay. Voting no, Senator Dorn. Voting no, Senator Dover. Senator Duncan. Voting no, Senator Erdman. Voting no, Senator Frederickson. Voting no, Senator Holleran. Voting no, Senator Hansen. Voting no, Senator Hardin. Voting no, Senator Holcroft. Voting no, Senator Hughes. Voting no, Senator Hunt. Not voting, Senator Ibaugh. Voting no, Senator Jacobson. Voting no, Senator Kauth. Voting no, Senator Linehan. Voting no, Senator Lippincott. Voting no, Senator Lowe. Voting no, Senator McDonald. Voting no, Senator McKinney. Senator Mosier. Voting no, Senator Merman. Voting no, Senator Raybold. Voting no, Senator Reapy. Voting no, Senator Sanders. Voting no, Senator Slama. Voting no, Senator Vargas. Voting no, Senator Von Gillern. Voting no, Senator Walls. Senator Wayne. Senator Wishart. Not voting. Vote is 0 ayes, 41 nays. Madam President, on the motion to recommit.
The motion is not successful. Mr. Clerk, the next vote is to dispense with the at-large reading. All those in favor vote aye. All those opposed vote nay.
Senator Aguilar. Voting yes, Senator Albright. Voting yes, Senator Arch. Voting yes, Senator Armendariz. Voting yes, Senator Ballard. Voting yes, Senator Blood. Voting yes, Senator Boston. Voting yes, Senator Bostar. Senator Bosselman. Voting yes, Senator Brandt. Voting yes, Senator Brewer. Voting yes, Senator Breezy. Voting yes, Senator John Kavanaugh. Voting yes, Senator Michaela Kavanaugh. Not voting, Senator Clements. Voting yes, Senator Conrad. Voting yes, Senator Day. Voting yes, Senator DeBoer. Voting yes, Senator DeKay. Voting yes, Senator Dorn. Voting yes, Senator Dover. Senator Duncan. Voting yes, Senator Erdman. Voting no, Senator Frederickson. Voting yes, Senator Holleran. Voting yes, Senator Hansen. Voting yes, Senator Hardin. Voting yes, Senator Holcroft. Voting yes, Senator Hughes. Voting yes, Senator Hunt. Voting yes, Senator Ibaugh. Voting yes, Senator Jacobson. Voting yes, Senator Kauth. Voting yes, Senator Linehan. Voting yes, Senator Lippincott. Voting yes, Senator Lowe. Voting no, Senator McDonald. Voting yes, Senator McKinney. Senator Mosier. Voting yes, Senator Merman. Voting yes, Senator Raybold. Voting yes, Senator Reapy. Voting yes, Senator Sanders. Voting yes, Senator Slama. Voting yes, Senator Vargas. Voting yes, Senator Von Gillern. Voting yes, Senator Walls. Senator Wayne. Senator Wishart. Not voting. Vote is 40 yeas, 2 nays, Madam President, to dispense with the at-large reading.
The at-large reading is dispensed with. Mr. Clerk, please read the titles.
Gross Legislative Bill 565, introduced by Boss 123, Slama 1, Rabel 28, Bill for Vernacular Natural Resource Amendment, Sections 1824, 41, 237, 454, 455, 453, 455, 479, 759, 670, 761, 177, reissues, section 37, 444, 445, 448, 449, 423, 21, 15, 61, revised statute 720, adopt the public natural resource product contract net change provision relating to municipal finance, change provision for Game Parks Commission, change provision law relating to fees, permits issued, destruction, predators, change provision related to proposition, Nebraska Oil and Gas Commission, state legislation for the state intent appropriation, state grant programs, provide duties for permanent economic, hydrogen, adopt nuclear hydrogen, and change eligibility qualification, board of directors, provisions, change provisions, power orders relating to state policy requirements, the annual report, described, define, redefine term, extends eligible grant to scrap tire projects, waste reduction, recycling, incentive act, harmonize provisions, provide not approve, repeal the original sections, declare an emergency.
All provisions of law related to procedure having been complied with, the question is, shall LB 565E pass with the emergency clause attached? All those in favor vote aye. All those opposed vote nay. Mr. Clerk, there's been a request for a roll call vote. Please call the roll.
Senator Aguilar, voting yes. Senator Albright, voting yes. Senator Arch, voting yes. Senator Armendariz, voting yes. Senator Ballard, voting yes. Senator Blood, voting yes. Senator Bosson, voting yes. Senator Bostar, Senator Bostelman, voting yes. Senator Brandt, voting yes. Senator Brewer, voting yes. Senator Breezy, voting yes. Senator John Kavanaugh, voting yes. Senator Michaela Kavanaugh, not voting. Senator Clements, voting yes. Senator Conrad, voting yes. Senator Day, voting yes. Senator DeBoer, voting yes. Senator DeKay, voting yes. Senator Dorn, voting yes. Senator Dover, Senator Dungan, voting yes. Senator Erdman, voting yes. Senator Frederickson, voting yes. Senator Halloran, voting yes. Senator Hansen, voting yes. Senator Hardin, voting yes. Senator Holcroft, voting yes. Senator Hughes, voting yes. Senator Hunt, not voting. Senator Ibaugh, voting yes. Senator Jacobson, voting yes. Senator Kauth, voting yes. Senator Linehan, voting yes. Senator Lippincott, voting yes. Senator Lowe, voting yes. Senator McDonald, voting yes. Senator McKinney, Senator Mosier, voting yes. Senator Merman, voting yes. Senator Raybold, voting yes. Senator Reapy, voting yes. Senator Sanders, voting yes. Senator Slama, voting yes. Senator Vargas, voting yes. Senator Von Gillern, voting yes. Senator Walls, Senator Wayne, Senator Wishart, not voting.
LB 5. Mr. Clerk, please record.
41 ayes, no nays, 3 present, not voting, 5 excused, not voting. Madam President, on advancement of the bill.
LB 565E passes with the emergency clause attached. Speaker Arch for an announcement.
Colleagues, please note that I am going to alter today's agenda slightly. At 1:15 p.m., when we return, I am scheduling on final reading 2 of the A bills we advanced from select file this morning, LB 243A and LB 583A. The bills will not be read on final reading at that time, but we will take up motions to return to select file for a specific amendment on each of the bills. These amendments are necessary due to the amendments the body adopted on their substantive bills on select file. These amendments were filed prior to the select file debate this morning, but they were not considered before cloture. When we finish with those 2 A bills, we will return to the location on the agenda where we are now. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Speaker Arch. Mr. Clerk for a motion.
Madam President, a few items quickly. Your Committee on Enrollment Review reports Legislative Bill 243A 583A and 754A as correctly engrossed and placed on final reading. Amendments to be printed. Senator Hunt, LB 557, 101, 32, 69, 113, 142, 210, 354, 355, 423, 446, 448, 101, 203, 272. Notice that the reference committee will meet in room 1525 upon recess, reference committee 1525 upon recess. And finally, Madam President, priority motion, Senator Frederickson moved to recess the body until 1:15.
Members, you've heard the motion. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed say nay. The motion carries. We are in recess.